All righty. Good morning, guys. This has been a long-awaited sit-down slash interview slash Q&A session for me for quite some time, and I am very, very glad we've been able to make it happen today, especially to start the week off like this. We are joined by none other than then Lieutenant and Team Leader of Killer Kane from First Force Reconnaissance, 1967, 1968, and retired Colonel Finlayson. He is joining us today, Andy Finlayson. This is his book from his service with Force Recon, leading Team Killer Kane, and he has written a second book covering the last portion of his duty with Force Recon, and as well as his time leading a rifle squad and then working exclusively with the Provincial Reconnaissance Unit. Very, very intriguing and a lot of great information in this book that covers from 1968 to 1970. But today, we will be speaking exclusively about his force reconnaissance time. Most of that is covered in this book. And without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to our guest. Mr. Andy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, bud.
Excellent. Would you like to give us just a little bio and how you ended up in the Marine Corps and Force Reconnaissance so that people can kind of get to know you a bit?
Sure, bud. I grew up in a small town in New Jersey called Merchantville. When I say small, it was about 3,700 people. I attended local schools there. While I was there, I became interested in the Marine Corps, and I joined in high school of my junior year. I joined the 68th Rifle Company, a reserve rifle company in Camden, New Jersey. You could do it back in those days. So I spent a year, a little over a year in the reserves. Uh, I was able to get an appointment to the United States Naval Academy, primarily because of my experience in the Marine Reserves. I spent 4 years at the Naval Academy, graduated, went into the Marine Corps. While I was at the Naval Academy, I attended jump school. I was able to volunteer during my summers. I would give up my leave time and attend specialist training. I went to Fort Benning and was qualified as a parachutist. I then later on made several jumps with SEAL Team 2. And I also went to jungle warfare trainings in Panama. Went to the basic schools, like all lieutenants in those days. I spent 6 months there and then went to Vietnam. When I reported into Vietnam, I fully intended and thought I would go to an infantry unit. And actually, my orders said that I would go to the 1st Marine Regiment. But when I got into the division headquarters, I was informed by the personnel officer that my orders had been changed and that I would be going down the hill from Hill 327 down to 1st Force Reconnaissance Company. Well, I tried to tell the personnel officer, listen, I'm not trained as a reconnaissance officer. I have no experience in recon at all. And I think that's maybe a mismatch. And he said, forget about it, Lieutenant. You're parachute qualified. That's good enough. We're going to send you down there. They just lost a lieutenant. He was killed out on patrol, and you're going to replace him. This had a tendency to increase my anxiety quite a bit. But I did. I went down, reported to First Force Recon Company, informed them of my lack of reconnaissance training. And the commanding officer, Major Lowry, said, that's not a problem, Andy. We're going to send you out on 3 snap-in patrols. We're going to send you out with 3 experienced patrol leaders. You'll just, it is sort of over-the-shoulder training for you. You'll see how they conduct a patrol. So after those 3 snap-in patrols, you'll be able to take out your own patrol. And I was assigned to the 5th platoon. That platoon had 2 teams. One was called Killer Kane, and one was called Brisbane. And for the vast majority, almost all, I think, of my patrols, took out Killer Kane. I never took out Brisbane. I went on, I think, only one patrol with Brisbane.
We've still got people coming in, which is good. I was going to say, since we're right here at the beginning, could you, and especially with that great information you gave us about not particularly having your reconnaissance, but you were. Did you say you were already dual qualified, air, parachute, and dive qualified yet?
No, it was just parachute qualified.
Parachute. Okay. Could you speak a little bit about what that initial your initial day getting there and meeting everybody and really, since you weren't really expecting to go force recon, can you kind of tell us what it was like meeting the guys and them kind of showing you around and what it was like that first day or so getting your bearings, so to speak?
Yes, well, I reported in to Major Lowry, who was the commanding officer. Um, I was looked over by the staff NCOs that were in the office at the time. I could tell they were looking at me as a Naval Academy graduate and as someone who was not had not gone to any other official reconnaissance schools, as sort of a babe in the woods. Um, as I said before, Major Lowry said we're going to send you out on some snap-in patrols with experienced patrol leaders, so you'll know what to do when you take out a patrol. He then took me down to a hooch where the officers from First Force were located. There were 6 other officers in that hooch. I reported aboard, and I went into the hooch. I was assigned a cot, and I met the other officers there. They were very helpful to me. They knew that I was not well experienced, and so several of them took me aside. A lieutenant called Lieutenant Carlisle, Captain Eric Barnes, Mike Henry, uh, um,
A
Lenny
friend, Tom
Torres.
Wright. Tom
Pardon
Wright,
me?
Tom Wright, your childhood friend, wasn't he there waiting on you?
No, Tom Wright
Oh,
was in the plane that when I went over, he took me out of the back of the plane and put me up front in first class.
that's
No,
what it
no,
was. Your
yeah.
first class.
Yes. No, but they were very helpful. They told me what to take on patrol. They told me how to conduct a patrol, how to write a patrol order properly, how to do research before I went out on a patrol. All those were very, very helpful. In fact, they even told me how to use C4 to heat sea rats and those sorts of things. So they're very helpful to me, and I was very grateful to them.
It's really very interesting first getting there and you're kind of seeing everything how it's set up. You're introduced and I like how you describe, which comes into play later on as we get into the story, and especially after one of the more notable um patrols, your kind of your little back porch hang area off your hooch to where y'all sit, and when the very few times that y'all would be at base for downtime that you could sit back and relax and have somebody over, or inevitably somebody would just show up and visit you. But I that was really interesting. Getting the layout of Reasoner, giving you a really hands-on view of what's going on. When you first arrive, you mentioned you're kind of getting to show, or everyone's showing you what to do. You're giving your gear more or less. Most of the viewers were really been SOG oriented, except for Doc Norton, who joined us and spoke a little bit about his time with Third Force. Would you explain the what you would consider your basic force reconnaissance loadout that you would take out? Gun, gear, stuff like that. Any insect repellent, like taping boots up, anything like that you could share with us?
Sure. Well, it varied over time too, because we wore different uniforms during that first year I was with Force Recon. We had the normal poplin green uh, utility that was issued to all Marines. We also had camouflage utilities, which we actually bargained for or traded for with the Air Force. The Air Force had the new camouflage utilities, and we also traded with the Special Forces and got Tiger Stripe utilities. So we had a mixed bag when we went out on patrol. We probably looked very, very strange to a lot of people when we went out. We all had boonie hats, soft covers. We never wore body armor or helmets. I think of only one patrol where we did that, and that was because we were in a dug-in position, and we had to be prepared for perhaps a ground combat assault. Other than that, we had a harness. On that harness, we usually had a K-bar knife, and in my case, I always had a flashlight on that harness on the front. I carried 9 magazines of 20 rounds each. In addition to that, I usually put a couple of extra magazines in my pack. Say something about the pack. We had a wide variety of packs. The military at that time had a standard rucksack. The Army, you've seen that the Army used that rucksack. It's quite large. We didn't use that rucksack. We used either a captured North Vietnamese rucksack, which was smaller, or the ARVN rucksack. We traded with the ARVNs to get the rucksack. We could actually buy them from them. And we found that smaller rucksack was just about right for us. We could put about 80 pounds into that rucksack, but it was a lot easier to carry. And we just didn't have all that extra weight from that larger rucksack. On the back, we had 2 canteens with 2 canteen cup covers inside. We had also on the back a first aid packet. I always took a 45 caliber 911 pistol with me. My Marines usually did not do that. They usually took their sidearms. I also took an M16. When I first arrived, most of the Marines were going out with the M14, but then we were issued the M16 very shortly after that. And we even used the Stoner system for a short period of time, and I can talk about that maybe a little later. I carried a lensatic compass on my front of my gear. Many of my Marines had lensatic compasses as well, because we were trained that we may have to E&E, and we would be on our own, and we needed that compass. I always had a laminated map system that I kept my maps for my patrol in. I made that. It was not something I was issued. My comrades in the hooch told me how to make one, and it was very neat and compact. I folded it up and put it in the right pocket of my utilities. In terms of dealing with insects, what we did was we made sure that when we applied our face paint, which we always did, to maintain overall camouflage while in the jungle, and we used camouflage paint that was developed by Helena Rubinstein, the cosmetic woman in New York. Our favorite was black and loam. Loam is a light green, and we would blend both of those colors into our face and neck, ears, and whatnot, so we were fully camouflaged. We often put insect repellent into that because it was easier to apply if we had insect repellent on the tip of that. We also put insect repellent around our boots. In fact, we soaked our jungle boots in insect repellent, and it was mainly not to prevent us from being bitten by insects, although insects were a major problem. It was to keep leeches out of our trousers. I had examples. I didn't learn my lesson. On one of my first snap-in patrols, I had a pretty serious encounter with leeches on Charlie Ridge. And
Would you? I hate to interrupt. Would you mind sharing that if you wouldn't mind? I know it's a little personal, but that's a horror story for most men.
yeah, I had not used enough insect repellent on my boots or my lower end of my trousers. And as a result, uh, a leech got into my trousers and worked its way up my leg until it reached my penis, and then it
Mm,
attached itself. And I
mm,
did not realize what that leech had done until I was sitting down on a trail during one of our stops, and I noticed that the front of my trousers were all blood soaked, and the leech had had his fill of blood off of my penis and dropped down into the where my boots were tucked into or where my trousers were tucked into my boots, and I took it out. It was a big leech and full of my blood. Uh, the doc came up in a patrol, looked at my penis, and said, "Lieutenant, you'll be okay. It'll close up in a little while. Don't worry." And so I went on, continued to go on the patrol.
that I instantly had to stop when I was reading that and just kind of squirm a little bit because that's every man's worst nightmare. I think in movies they always kind of allude to, you better watch out for the leeches, and I don't think I've ever actually spoken to someone well, I have one or two people, but that's rare. And thank God he didn't do any damage to your tools down there.
Well, we had other instances where leeches got into us, and we would in the morning we would find out that maybe as many as a half a dozen leeches would attach themselves to us. So we'd take the insect repellent, and it didn't take much. All you had to do is put a little drop on your finger. You touch the head of that leech, and he'd drop right off. You didn't want to pull a leech off because that oftentimes made it more difficult to heal. But if you hit that leech with a drop of insect repellent, it killed them.
I've heard that stuff was powerful. That most of the guys in on here, y'all will recognize on the infantry units. The guys carrying the white clear bottle. That is slam full of some powerful bug juice. If I'm not mistaken, I know it was a force reconnaissance man, and I'm not sure if maybe you mentioned it in passing or maybe it was someone else. But I actually heard of a group that they were on an OP and making their way up to the OP, and a young man had actually gotten a leech to where it started going inside of his penis, actually, and they had to get him medevaced immediately because it was beginning to work its way down. So I don't like leeches, even with no contact. Just hearing y'all's story, just. And people are saying, glad I wasn't team medic that day. This man deserves a Purple Heart from that leech one alone. We've already got a few interesting questions if you would like to hit them right off the bat.
Sure.
Okay. James Porter, can you ask Andy about a Marine Corps medic called Ed Henry who was in Dong Ha? And I'm thinking it's for the show. Did you know a medic named Ed Henry?
No, Corman. I've heard the name. I'm sure he was there. I was not up at Dong Ha because my platoon was at Dong Ha and came down to Da Nang at Camp Reesner in January of 1967, and that's when I joined them. And so I was unfamiliar of any of the people who were at Dong Ha at that time. Although I've heard that I heard that name, and I'm sure he was with us.
I'm actually if gonna borrow a little photo from your book and kind of give the guys a little bit of what your AO was like here. Um, I hate that is kind of
Well,
clogged
I
in,
can
but
talk to that. You can see Da Nang up there. At Camp Reesner was located on the western side of there. There was Hill 327, and we were located at the base of Hill 327, which was the division headquarters for the 1st Marine Division. We conducted patrols to the north into Trois Tien province, into Quang Nam province, which is that area that you see in your slide, with the exception of the lower portion of that, which is in Quang Tin province. Quaison Valley is in Quang Tin province. So those are the three provinces we operated in. Some of the bad areas that we routinely would have contact with the enemy, and that's because the second NVA division operated in those areas and also bivouacked in those areas. Charlie Ridge would be the northernmost one, not a little bit lower than that. If you just go directly east of Da Nang, or excuse me, west of Da Nang, right in that area, that's the Charlie Ridge area. You also have base area 116, which is further to the west, almost in the middle of your slide, up a little, and then over to the left. Actually, that's the area that base area 116. That's where the second NVA division had their headquarters, and also one of their regiments was located in that area. North of that is Happy Valley, which is on the north side of Charlie Ridge. That is where another regiment of the second NVA division often bivouacked. And when we went into Happy Valley, we almost always made contact. There was a trail system leading into Happy Valley, which was called the Yellow Brick Road. It ran all the way from the border with Laos into Happy Valley. So when we went along that trail system, we almost always made contact with the enemy. Down south, near the Quaison, you had the Quaison Valley, and north of the Quaison Valley was in that area right there, you had base area 116. That was a sort of a temporary bivouac area for the second NVA division. Whenever they were moving against Da Nang or moving against the headquarters of the district headquarters in Quaison, they would occupy that area, and we patrolled in that area as well. Further to the west of that is Elephant Valley. Excuse me, not Elephant Valley, but Antenna Valley. And in between Antenna Valley and the Quaison Valley is a long, winding trail in between the mountains. It was one of the places we conducted ambushes, and even later, a year and a half later, when I was back in Vietnam, we conducted ambushes along that trail, and they worked very well. The enemy had to use that trail system to get between the Quaison Valley and Antenna Valley.
I can't remember. I know it's been mentioned. Did y'all have any contact or any work against the coal mine? Were they actively working and getting resources from the coal mine, or was it an old French mine that was just shut down and still is a landmark?
Well, the South Vietnamese government was intent on turning the An Hoa Basin into a industrial base, a place where light industry could be built up. Unfortunately, the enemy made that impossible. The Nong Song coal mine, which you're talking about, was southwest of the An Hoa combat base, and it was manned. There was a Marine cap unit there. There was also some, I think, some Popular Forces platoons there. That was a working coal mine, but because of the danger and the threat from the enemy, very little of that coal was mined.
Yeah, I've actually heard Rabbi speak about it several times, and him going either by it on the aircraft inserting or something to that area. And
Yeah,
of
later on
course,
my second tour, we did a lot of work in that area and also to the west in base area 112.
That's what I was going to say, guys. It's kind of blacked out, but it's over here where my cursor is. And the second book, Paddy Recon, really goes into some great ambushes when he's leading a rifle squad.
A rifle company.
Rifle company. I'm sorry, not
Mhm.
squad, a company, leading a rifle company, and they really kick the NVA and local VC's butt quite often. And another thing he mentioned, which we'll get into, he Mr. Andy learned quickly from his first few snap-in patrols. We'll get to these questions, but he was a absolute beast with artillery. We'll get into that because I know the guys are going to be interested in hearing. I will be too. I'm always interested about your work with. No, the Saw guys did not wear blue jeans, maybe once or twice, but that was known American, and they were still trying to act secretive. That was the Navy SEALs down south in the Delta. But
Yeah,
great
we never
question
wore
nonetheless.
civilian clothes of any kind on patrol.
I was just fixing to ask you if you had ever heard of anybody, but that seems like that'd be a no-go. Absolutely. Um, Army SF was known to have a lot of foreigners in it during the Vietnam War. Did you have any foreigners in Force Recon with you in the Marines?
Yes, we did. We had several, and in fact, I talk about one of them, Corporal Watson, who was a bit of a character. He had been in the Royal Marines and served in Oman and Africa, Kenya. Highly experienced and probably one of the best. There is a picture of him. It's probably one of the best field Marines I ever had the opportunity to work with. Unfortunately, he had brought a lot of habits from the Royal Marines, and he had a rather cavalier attitude towards discipline and proper relationships with officers and staff NCOs. He was a bit of a trial, but you couldn't ask for a better man on patrol. I thought he was fantastic. I went on about 3 patrols with him, and each one of them were very interesting. And he was an exceptionally brave individual. He was not the kind of person to shirk or hold back when we were anywhere near close to the enemy. He was eager to engage them.
He and of course, when I'm going to be looking for it, I won't be able to find it. But there, as I remember, one of the first times me and you speaking, actually, a little more in depth in our initial introduction, if you will, about the Marine Corps. And since we're on this, before we get to other questions, we can lead into this about specifically that mission that you're speaking of, that he showed just crazy madness bravery out there, and you coming back and not only writing him up, but I believe 2 other Marines from a prior mission in maybe June or August, maybe, or March, and you quickly realizing that Force Recon is not like any other unit with awards. They don't give individual awards out for instances like this, and that was very shocking and quite honestly angering. Could you speak a little bit about how the Marines looked at y'all and the award situations that y'all went through getting awards?
Well, again, I think that this may have evolved over time, and there was. While I was there in 1967, I became very angry over the award system. I felt that some of my Marines, Corporal Watson in particular, and others, um, demonstrated exceptional bravery. You had to remember that these are people that are going out with just 5 or 6 fellow Marines. They're going into an area that's completely controlled by the enemy, and they survived basically on their own resources. And when they made contact, they demonstrated exceptional bravery. And I wrote them up for awards, and thinking that I had always been told that when you wrote up an award for someone, that it was generally approved. Well, that was not the case with reconnaissance units, and I'm not sure exactly what caused that, but most of the awards that I wrote up were not approved. Many of them were lost. I had a very good um, admin sergeant who later went on to become a colonel in the Marine Corps. He said that he was going to try his best to help me because it seemed that we'd send up award recommendations and they would come back disapproved. And with the instruction, include this in an end of tour award. And of course, I had never heard of an end of tour award, and I said, "Well, why is that? I thought we don't need an end of tour award. What we need to do is recognize individual bravery when it occurs." And I actually had I had a very serious confrontation with a member of the award board up at Division because they were the people that were sending these awards back to us unapproved. And he was a major, and of course I was a second lieutenant. And you really don't confront majors in the Marine Corps if you're a second lieutenant. But I let him know that I thought that these people needed to be rewarded for their bravery. And then he said something to me that I almost wanted to punch him. I came really close to punching him. He said, "You guys are just doing your job." And that really, really burned my ass. Here's a guy who's a staff weenie up there in the staff trying to tell me that the kind of work we were doing is just doing our job. And a sergeant major who was there saw how angry I was getting, and he, wise man that he was, he pulled me aside and he said, "Lieutenant, nothing will be served by you striking this major. Your career will be ended. Why don't you come down to my office and we'll talk about this?" And he told me that the problem with the awards board is they had no real understanding of what reconnaissance teams did. Some of them didn't believe that what we did, we did. There was a tendency to, I remember he said there was a comment that Force Recon already had 2 Medals of Honor. How many more did they want? That kind of comment. And I was angry about it. And no matter what I did, I think of the individual awards that I sent up about a dozen, and I think only 2 were approved. The rest came back, and I had to include them in an end of tour award, which really, to a lot of the Recon Marines, they didn't get what they deserved. They would get a Navy Commendation Medal instead of a Bronze Star. When I wrote them up for Silver Stars. So there was a massive downgrade for them. During my second tour in Vietnam, they seemed to be a little more realistic. I wrote up a couple of Marines, and they were approved. I just think that it was 1967 for some reason, but it made me very, very angry. In fact, I was so angry, I promised that I would never receive an award from the Marine Corps again. And I kept that promise. I never did. I received a Purple Heart, of course, and I received a Joint Service Commendation Medal from the CIA, but I never received another award for the Marine Corps and wouldn't allow anybody to write me up for one.
I mean and like you said, it made me extremely mad reading that. And then when I read that major's words, I mean, he seemed like an okay guy, but when he said that, I instantly was like, that's a rear echelon person that does not need to be saying something like that. And much like the SF men, they got medals of honor for nearly, taking on a 200 men, and Creighton Abrams, the guy gets a DSC. They're going to try and get it a medal of honor. He's walking off the compound and he says, I'll be damned if that boy ever gets the Medal of Honor. And sure enough, he did not get the Medal of Honor. So I don't understand why they treated Force Recon and Special Forces like that. Y'all are doing your job, but it's nice to be recognized for that job. Did your guest use an M16? And if so, did he have any issues with it?
Initially, I actually got a traded M16 with the Air Force. I carried that on about 10 patrols. I never had any problems with it. We were issued M16s. Aside from the need to keep it clean, we never had any serious problems. I don't remember any time we had a jam in a combat situation. Of course, we test fired our weapons before we went out on every patrol. We had a test fire pit, and every weapon we carried was test fired. At least a full magazine went through the weapons. So I never had that serious problem, but I do know that many of my friends who were in the infantry at that time had a lot of problems with the M16, especially because of the poor ammunition. There's a problem with the ammunition causing a jam. Also, I believe that there were some problems with the receiver. The receiver was stamped or not machined. So it's too bad because the developer of the M16, Gary Stoner, that was his initial product, and he followed it up with what he thought was an improved product, the Stoner system, and we also had that. Most of my Marines really loved the Stoner, and we in particular like the Stoner light machine gun, which was a 5.56 round drum magazine with 100 rounds in it. It could really turn a bad situation into a good one. And there's a picture of it. That's Sergeant Hager, later Master Gunnery Sergeant Hager, with the Stoner system. Very good system. I had the carbine, carried it with me, liked it. I preferred it over the M16, but we turned in a rather glowing report on it, our platoon. There was, I think, only 3 platoons in the entire battalion that were given the Stoner. And all of us said we thought it was a superior weapon to the M16. However, I think, I don't want to cast aspersions, but I think Colt Firearms did not want to pay Stoner for the Stoner system, and they preferred to have the M16 bought by the U.S. government. And of course, they had a lot of retired generals on their board. And as a result, we got the M16. And they made improvements to the M16. The M16 that was carried in 1969 and 70 was a lot different from the M16 that was carried in 1967.
Absolutely. And and I get this all the time when we were speaking yesterday. Could you and a tidbit before the question, I think also maybe one of the grunt squads may have actually got a few to test out in the platoon size level, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to say that
No,
for
it,
sure,
it
but
was. It was distributed to infantry units and also to reconnaissance units. Any ground combat unit received enough of them. I don't think more than maybe 200 were distributed throughout the entire division at any one time, and we only kept them for about a month and a half.
That's that's so wild that I get questions and people are always saying, that's the Navy SEAL gun, and I'm like, no, that if y'all only knew the Force Reconnaissance men were testing that up in the Highlands and I Corps long before they made their way down to the Delta. And I wish, especially after hearing you speak about them and the other guys speak, I could only imagine what it would have been like if y'all would have been able to keep them and get to use them on a regular basis. I think.
We asked to keep them. We asked to keep them.
Oh yeah, that's right. And then they sadly weren't having any of it, I suppose.
Well, they came down and took them.
Oh God. Mm, we've got actually another interesting weapons question. What was your team weapon mix like as far as rifles, or as far as how many rifles, LMGs, launchers, anything of the sort?
Okay, well, we of course force reconnaissance is light. We never took mortars out or anything like that. Um, we had the M911 45 caliber pistol that we took out. Initially, when I got there, we had the M14, later transitioned to the M16. We took the M60 machine gun. I like to take the M60 machine gun with me, even though it was heavy. I thought that it was a really nice thing to have if you encounter the enemy, because you could get at least fire superiority enough to break contact with that machine gun. So I usually always took a M60 machine gun with me. We also took the M79 grenade launcher, and we found that to be effective, especially with a flechette round, which was like a shotgun shell with flechettes. One of our people would take that often in addition to an M16, and we would spread load some 40 cal or 40 millimeter rounds for it. Those were the principal weapons that we took. We didn't take any really exotic weapons. Later on, we took on my second tour, we had silenced 22s, a 22 caliber pistol that was silenced. But we never took any. Sometimes we took shotguns. We had shotguns on occasion. They were very heavy and cumbersome in the jungle, and didn't have the kind of penetrating power we would like to have, although they were good for close combat. Once in a while, we experimented with shotgun with a point man, but we found that it was better to just have M16s. So on a normal force recon patrol, which was 7 or 8 men, everybody, including the patrol leader like myself, carried an M16. We had one M60 machine gun, and we also had an M79 grenade launcher. I don't know of any other weapons that we took with us.
To piggyback on that, we've got some great questions coming, but to piggyback on that for a personal note, I don't think I've seen it come up, but I know it will. What was the average, well, considering you've got the M60, if you can remember, what was the average ammunition loadout for each man?
Each man was about 300 rounds for the M16. For the 45, I only carried about 3 magazines for that, because I consider that a last resort weapon. For the M79, we usually took about 24 rounds. And for the M60, we took about 400 rounds. And same with the Stoner. With the Stoner, we sometimes could get up to 600 rounds.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's a big question, because again, we're used to the SAW guys, and of course, they were loading up on astronomical amounts of ammunition, but y'all being somewhat within artillery range and able to get a little quicker air support, y'all weren't needing to carry almost 1,000 rounds of ammunition per man. What was y'all's grenade situation? Did y'all like to carry both smoke? Well, I know you need to carry smoke, but smoke, fragmentation, any claymores or anything like that?
Yeah, we took claymores. We took M26 grenades, fragmentation grenades. Took a lot of smoke. I always took at least one smoke, often two. My radar operator, because I often told him to pop smoke, he usually took two. My assistant patrol leader took one or two. So we usually had 6 or 7 smoke grenades spread loaded throughout the patrol. M26s varied. Initially, I took 6 of them out, but I found that I didn't need that many, and neither did my team. Normally, we took 1 or 2 per patrol, not a lot. We would use those to break contact. We used CS grenades. Everybody took CS, at least one CS grenade. We all took a gas mask, and we broke contact several times using gas. That CS gas was effective in allowing us to break contact. I think a lot of the NVA in particular were spooked by gas. They didn't realize it was CS. They thought maybe it was poison gas, and they just wouldn't have any part of it. They would cease firing whenever we used gas. It's also, we use gas to cleanse an ambush site. That was something we also did. We would, you never knew whether somebody was playing dead or somebody had a hand grenade or something else. When you went into the killing zone, we threw gas in there to make sure, because if he's wounded, he's going to be thrashing around. But generally speaking, we used CS in addition to the ambush. We used CS for breaking contact, and we did that a couple of times.
I'm sure it'll come up again when we start talking about POWs, and I'll save that because some of the guys have some interesting questions I want to get to for them. Did your gear or your loadout change throughout your tour as you got more experience? Did you start or stop carrying certain items, or as time went on?
Well, one thing I learned is I wanted to take enough water. I usually took 6 canteens of water. We couldn't always stop, and where we were operating in high ground, there wasn't enough water. Um, the the heat and humidity caused us to drink a lot of water. It was not uncommon for us to drink 4 or 5 canteens in a day because of the heat and humidity. We would try to find a stream, and when we find a stream, I would set up security. One man would take all of our canteens to the stream, and while the rest of us provided security, because it was always dangerous around streams. The enemy used streams for water as well, and we would fill up our canteens that way. Uh, when I was going out on a patrol and doing my research, I always looked at past patrol reports, because patrol reports in the same area identified areas where water was flowing. And we wanted to make sure that the water was flowing, because if it wasn't flowing, you had a lot of serious disease problems. Even still, you had tapeworms and some other worms that were in that mountain water, and you had to use halazone tablets to kill them. Sometimes that didn't even work. A lot of us had worms that we later found out we had worms. Um, but I always would tell, in my patrol order I gave to my team, which was rather extensive, probably more than many patrol leaders gave. I would identify all the areas on the map where water was located, so that our patrol route that we would take, I always tried to take us through an area where we could find some water.
Wow. And there's a few instances where you guys are laid up and needing some water, and of course, like you said, the NVA need water too, and y'all end up coming across each other a few times with water. Very, very hairy situation. I found some really good photos. Once we get to through some of the questions for some of the stories that people are going to really, really enjoy. Um, oh, great question, Daniel. What fatigue did you find the most effective? The green, the Erdl, camouflage, tiger stripe, or, and I assume he means the regular OD.
I felt for comfort, it was the green. The green poplin was very comfortable. Um, I like the camouflage for the camouflage purpose. I think if I had to pick one, I would take the camouflage, because in the jungle you really need to break up your background. You got to blend into the background, and the camouflage utilities allowed us to do that. The tiger stripe was good as well, but it was very hot. I found the tiger stripe to be just a little bit too hot and a little bit too tight fitting. So I would, if you wanted my personal opinion, I think probably my Marines would tell you the same thing. It was the camouflage poplin.
Mhm. And the it seems like I've heard from not only you and the Sogmen. It seems like well, especially for you, you definitely wore, I would say, when you were in the field with the PRU, you wore your tiger stripes a lot more often. But those were your kind of show off pictures, or if you were out on a local to where, like you said, you wasn't going to be too hot, or you weren't going to rip out of them doing something, wear them out like that. And to the point you were talking about how good the camo is, guys, I've got some photos to where you'll see the regular OD green that he's talking about, that he likes and the other Marines like so much. And they've got a legend of force reconnaissance history, Captain Fred Vogel, and he's in tiger stripes compared to the other guys. And y'all just see how good the OD is compared to the tiger stripe in this area that they're in. Fred is standing out quite a bit, in my opinion, compared to the other guys in the photos we'll get to. Let's see. I know there was one more question about an M16. They were wanting to know, but I think we covered that. Did you get the new 16 with the birdcage flash suppressor or the old Tripong flash suppressor?
We
I
got the
imagine you
old.
got
We had the old. We had the old one.
Okay. Did you ever, with your trades with the SF guys or the Air Force, did you ever come across your first tour a Car 15, or was that on down the line?
We would go over to SOG and also to the naval
NAD.
security unit, and they had the car at that time, but we never had them. We never even had them on my second tour. That was specifically for SOG and for special units, and we never had it in the PRU either.
Oh, wow. Okay. I thought you actually had gotten your hands on one with the PRU, although y'all had y'all's pick of the litter as well with that. I guess we could kind of, because didn't you kind of visit SOG later on, or did you visit over there with the SOG guys your first tour? I was going to see if you could speak a bit of.
There was a sergeant called Gunny Hamlin, famous. He lost a leg parachuting. He was over at the Naval Advisory Unit that conducted very secret operations, inserting frogmen up in North Vietnam, and he had a lot of contacts with SOG. We went over and visited SOG once on my first tour. It was, they're highly classified. They didn't tell us anything about what they were doing. We really just went into the compound. He knew the people in SOG, and that was about the only time on my first tour. Second tour, SOG helped us out quite a bit. CCN North, we got a lot of equipment from them, a lot of advice. They were very, very helpful to us because we're doing basically the same work. They were doing it across the fence, but we were doing it out near the border.
Absolutely. And I was recently speaking with by the way, the Marine he was talking about is mentioned in this book by Doc Norton. He wrote a book on First Sergeant Hamlin. What wonderful book. And as it says, one tough Marine, he absolutely is that. And he was working on the Navy Force Recon side of SOG, doing boat missions and North Vietnam encoachments. So he was doing some very interesting stuff. And
yeah, he was one tough dude, I'll tell you. Even though he was missing a leg, he invited us to go out on a run on the beach. And I thought this is going to be a piece of cake because, I'm young and I've got two legs and he's only got one. And he kicked our ass. I mean, we ran for around 4 miles and I was completely winded. And he wasn't even breathing hard. So he was a tough dude.
And it mentions, and we'll kind of get into that one in the second part since it more aligns with that. But he's got some interesting photos of some of the gear and information about the gear they were helping out with. And I actually spoke with a SOG man who vividly remembers in 1968 his one encounter with Force Recon Marines. They came on base and had gotten some ammunition, and a few weapons and stuff. And that instantly made me think, heck, you might have been crossing paths with some of the guys that were mentioning that. Infantry wants to know, did you fight against both the VC and the NVA? If so, what were the differences between them, if any at all?
Yeah, that's a good question because people who know about the war have the opinion that the Marines only fought up around the DMZ in Quang Tri province. Actually, we suffered more casualties in Quang Nam province, where I was during the war, than any other province in country. And the fighting might have not have been as intense as up on the DMZ, but it was continuous. The infantry was constantly engaged with local VC and also with NVA, and it was continuous. I mean, The only respite the infantry ever got was during the monsoon when it was so rainy that no one was fighting. So it was bad. We had several major operations in Guangdong province where there were a number of casualties on both sides, but they don't get the recognition in the history books the way they should. When I was in Force Recon, almost 100% of our engagements were with North Vietnamese units. And those units, we knew who they were. They were the regiments, the subordinate regiments of the 2nd NVA Division, or the 368th Missile Regiment, which was the one that lobbed rockets at the air base on occasion. Also, the 402nd Sapper Battalion, which is the one that we ambushed. They were actually, supposedly, the 402nd Sapper Battalion was supposed to be VC. But when we captured their records, we found out that over 90% of their soldiers came from North Vietnam. And that was another misperception, I think, on the part of a lot of people, that most of the time we engaged North Vietnamese Army. And North Vietnamese Army were different from the VC. The VC, as a general rule, were much more defensive oriented. They didn't like to engage. They broke contact quickly. They weren't particularly skillful, not well equipped, oftentimes with just a single magazine. I never really worried, even when I was in the infantry, about the VC. It was the NVA that I worried about, because they were real soldiers. They were well trained. They were well equipped. In many cases, better equipped than we were. Certainly, much better equipped than the ARVN. The ARVN really never even had the M16 rifle until 1968. They were dealing with World War II hand-me-downs and doing a pretty good job with it, but they were not properly equipped. It was a failing on the part of the Americans, I think, not to equip the ARVN better. It would have hugely improved their morale, and their fighting ability. But the enemy had some weapons that were clearly as good, if not better, than ours. The AK-47 was an excellent weapon, easier to maintain than the M16, had a heavier round, penetrated in the jungle better than the 5.56. They also had the RPD machine gun, which was a very good light machine gun, and they had them in numbers. They had RPGs, something that we never really carried in the infantry until we had laws. We had the 3.5 rocket launcher, which was not particularly adapted to Vietnam. So the enemy had some good equipment. They also had claymores. They had fairly large numbers of grenades. There were Chinese grenades. Those grenades were not as good as our M26s, but they had a lot of them. The weakness of the NVA usually is in the meeting engagement. They did a lot of they did their homework before they made an attack. They used sand tables, they did map studies, and they prepared for long periods of time without engaging. They chose their time to engage and the place to engage, which gave them an advantage. They had some highly skilled sapper units. They were good. They were good. They were not good in meeting engagements. In other words, when you met them on a trail out west, they just did not react well or quickly. The same applied when I was in the infantry. They, in a meeting engagement, they were often confused, probably looking to get orders from someone, and they didn't react as quickly as we did. However, in the defense, they were very, very tough. When they got into a fortified village, getting them out of that village was really tough because they were staunch and brave soldiers.
That's definitely one thing, like you said at the beginning, people have such preconceived notions about the VC, definitely, but the NVA, thinking, they're just, jungle people that aren't a real army, that don't know how to fight. And people quickly learn that is the furthest thing from the truth. Now, they might not have, like you said, every group have their stuff together, but many of the groups, which will, when we do our photo show and tell, and especially about the sapper group y'all came across, that really shows how y'all's tactics can overcome some stuff. It's a great one. We'll hit these questions since the guys are getting some great ones in before we do that. Alex wants to know, were there any men you looked up to, strive to be like within the force? I'm sure there were many good men that inspired you, but the recon men that were larger than life and stood above the rest, in your opinion?
Well, to be quite honest, I liked them all. In my platoon, I had great respect for them. They brought with them more experience than I had when I first came there. They also had some natural skills, innate skills. Because of that, I really looked at my men the way a coach on a football or basketball or baseball team would. I had some experience in all those teams, and I was sort of a team-oriented person. And I said, I'm going to put the best people in the best positions in that patrol. And to give you an example, I had three Marines who were outstanding point men: Slowick, Garcia, and Russell. And they were my point men most of the time. You may think, well, you didn't rotate the point man enough. I said, no, I think point men are so critical and so important to getting a drop. That's Bobby Garcia, probably the best point man I had, although Russell and Slowick were just about as good. I would organize with in this way. I would put my really skillful point man on point. I put my next skillful man, or sort of a point man in waiting, as this backup point man. Then I would have myself third in the column. Behind me would be the radio operator, so I could get to him real quick and he could get my orders real quickly. After that, I had my corpsman. After that, I had my machine gunner. Then I had my backup for my rear point, and then I had my rear point. So there were 8 Marines. I thought that was the optimum force recon patrol. We had enough men to fight, but we had few enough men to hide, and we were pretty successful at that. In fact, during 34 patrols, we got the drop on the enemy every single time. I was never ambushed, and the enemy never got the drop on us at all. And in fact, during that entire time, I never lost a man killed. I had some wounded, but never had a man killed.
And speaking of that, there's a great one to where y'all are near Hill 381, I think, and talking about the camo. Corporal Barecki, the point man, lets people know as y'all are crawling through an old vineyard, and shortly after y'all are laying there, literally a column of oblivious NVA soldiers, young NVA soldiers in their gray-green field uniforms, pith helmets, all clean, brand new AK-47s with 30-round mags, just came up and pretty much stopped, and we're hanging out there until y'all got ready to call in Artie. So stuff like that is all throughout this book, guys. We'll get into some of them, but again, we can't cover all of them because there are a ton of amazing stories. Let me get to the rest. God,
But the bottom line, though, is I admired all the men that I worked with. I mean that sincerely too. They were all very, very capable, had unique skills. We had some legends in Force Recon. We had Clovis Kaufman. Who had a Navy Cross and 4 or 5 Silver Stars from Korea, and he's quite a guy. We also had some characters as well. We had E. Hawkaday Walker, who was a legend in the Marine Corps. He was an officer who had dueling scars from Germany, where he went to school. He's the Marine that had the gold jump wings on his green Cadillac. never owned civilian clothes, that kind of thing. Um, we had some interesting people. I admired my commanding officers, Major Lowry and King Dixon and Tim Keating. Those three commanding officers, company commanders, were outstanding, and I admired them greatly.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, heck, the if I remember correctly, the mess hall sergeant was a WW2 Marine Raider who saw combat all through the Pacific Island campaign. So that when your cook's a Marine Raider legend, that lets you know what the company's full of.
Yeah, he was a hell of a cook too. We ate very well. We lived a good life back in the rear. I mean, compared to the infantry, we lived well. We didn't live in foxholes. We lived in hooches. We ate in a very nice, clean mess hall. Our food was outstanding. I have no. In fact, I often felt guilty. I would invite friends from the infantry to come up and visit me, and they would all comment about how cushy the life I was living back in the rear.
That's great. Mr. I spoke to Mr. Larry Quigley today, who's over in Georgia. I think he may have been on the tail end of Killer Kane. I know he was with Swift Scout. I think he was your RTO for a period of time before you went home. And he told me to tell you hello. And I think you got up with Swift Scout when you heard about their ambush incident during Tet, when they really had got banged up pretty bad. He may be watching, he may comment, but he wanted me to tell you hello this morning.
Yeah, well, Larry Quigley was an outstanding Marine and recon Marine too. He knew his job. He really took it seriously. Real smart guy too. He was very very intelligent and brought a lot to the team. I greatly admire him. I stay in touch with him. Legitimately brave guy.
He is quite the character. Anglico trained, very very interesting man, and I want to wish him, if he's watching. He had a little boo boo cleaning up the house, and he fell and broke his wrist. So everyone, give your well wishes to Mr. Larry. He's a little banged up, but I wanted to let you know that he was thinking about you and wanted me to tell you hello. We're going to try and have him on here when he heals up a bit.
Do you believe that story about the bad wrist broken at home? I would suspect that he got in a bar fight somewhere and punched somebody too hard.
With Mr. Larry, anything's possible.
That's
Anything.
true.
He could be covering his tracks.
Yeah.
Oh, Jason has a good one. We're kind of swip-flopping, but Jason wants to know, how often was the team going out on missions?
Well, we went out 3 or 4 times a month. Normally, we'd go out for 4 days, come back in for 3 days, and then go out again for another 4 days. So you look at 10 months. I was a team leader for 10 months. I went on 34 patrols. So that's 3.4 patrols a month.
And thank goodness I dog-legged this. And guys, I'm gonna end up adding both of the books I've shown you. This is a Force Recon medic who his first real action with Force Recon was trying to come help Colonel Finland, or Lieutenant Finlayson, and they really weren't in need of too much help, but they got help nonetheless. And we'll be showing the photo of the mission, and this is a great look into Force Recon from a corpsman's eyes. And this book is Inside Force Recon by legendary writer Ray Stubbe, and he mentions right here, upon the return to base camp, Finlayson remembers, we celebrated with beer on the back porch of our hoop at Camp Reasoner and sang Irish drinking songs led by Corporal Watson. This began the 9-month siege of Killer Kane, the team that initiated contact with the enemy at every opportunity. During this time, Killer Kane participated in 34 long-range patrols with 181 confirmed kills by artillery, and airstrikes, 255 probable kills by arty and air, with 42 confirmed kills by small arms and 9 prisoner of war snatches in this period. So that can kind of give you a little indicator of how Andy and Killer Kane were running the table, so to speak. And we'll have some. I've seen the POW question, guys, and when we get to our photos, Mr. Andy's got some wonderful stuff for us lined up. Here we go. Can you talk about any specific action by any one Marine that you saw that stands out as the most daring or brave action that you personally witnessed?
Well, that's a hard one because I saw several. I think one of the ones that that really stand out was one when we were far out west near the Laotian border, and we were surrounded by NVA, and we came very close to being overrun and completely wiped out. And Corporal Russell from Ocean City, New Jersey, outstanding Marine, was carrying a Stoner light machine gun, and the enemy was within 10, 15 feet. Our corpsman initiated the contact. There he is. Our corpsman initiated the contact at a range of about 5 feet. A North Vietnamese soldier parted the elephant grass in front of him, and he shot him with his M14. But then the enemy unloaded on us. Fortunately for us, they were firing high, which indicates to me they weren't particularly experienced soldiers, probably new, but there were a lot of them. And Russell stood up with his M6, with the Stoner light machine gun, and fired that, cutting down the elephant grass in front of him for 180 degrees and hitting several North Vietnamese. Once he did that, the enemy knew they were in for a bad day. And his heroism, he was later wounded, I think, from a grenade fragment. They threw a grenade fragment in there and hit Williams and him. But he didn't phase him at all. Even though he had a face wound, he kept on firing that Stoner until he ran out of ammunition. Brave guy. There are other instances like that, but that's one that is very memorable to me. There's no doubt about it. He saved our ass.
I'm trying to mark stuff down because I know some interesting stuff when we talk about pictures are going to come up, and I'm marking notes. We've got several more good ones, and I think it'll be time for us to get into show and tell. People are anxious to see some photos. This is a great one from Jason. How did you personally train new members of the team when they came on?
Well, fortunately, I had a good platoon sergeant. I had good sergeants. I had good team members. A lot of their training took place in their own hooch when they talked to each other. I always, when a new man came in, I always took him back on the back porch, sat him down, talked to him, filled out a note to myself in my platoon commander's notebook about, how old he was, where he went to school, what he did, what was his hobbies, parents' address, if unfortunately I had to write to them. I then made sure that when we went out on our first patrol, and in fact, all of our patrols, we went through the same thing over and over again. And I'm sure some of my Marines were kind of fed up with it because we were doing the same thing over and over again before we went out on a patrol. I would read the patrol order to everybody assembled on the back porch and ask if there were any questions. And I would not only ask questions of the people who were experienced, but I would deliberately ask the new guy if he had any questions and what he thought his responsibilities were on patrol. Now, some of the men we got had gone to recon school back in the United States, and they had a pretty good idea of what they're going to be doing. But we got some Marines from the MPs and some other places because recon suffered casualties, and they were assigned to us. So they didn't have the level of skills that some of the other men had. But I would usually, if I noted that the fellow was not well trained, I would have my platoon sergeant or my uh, assistant patrol leader take them aside and make sure that they understood what they had to do. And of course, we would rehearse every time. This is why I say that some of the Marines got tired of it. I would make them rehearse. We would line up the way we were going to patrol. We would go immediate action right, immediate action left, immediate action forward, immediate action to the rear, what we were going to do if there was a prisoner, who was going to be responsibility for tying the guy up with parachute cord, who was going to take charge of that prisoner. Um, I would make sure that everybody in the patrol knew the frequencies on the radio. So if I was dinged or the radio operator was dinged, they could still use the radio and get artillery support if necessary by switching to the artillery freak. Everybody had to take notes. We would test fire our weapons, and we would make sure that that new man felt comfortable with his weapon. We often took them down to the range where they would fire their weapons. We also would take new people down to the 11th Marines to have them instructed in how to call and adjust artillery and airstrikes. So it was a never-ending process. And in addition to that, we took the new man out on a run. We would run down to from Hill 327. We would run down to the PX and back, which was about 3 miles, and it would tell me whether or not he was physically fit to go out on patrol. If he wasn't, he would have to stay in the rear and make that run every single day until it was not a problem for him. Just getting adjusted to the heat and the humidity in Vietnam was sometimes difficult, even for people who were qualified and trained. So that's what I did. I made sure everybody who went out on patrol knew what they were going to have to do and that they were qualified to do it.
That's a very, very great answer. And one thing that really hit me right off the bat, especially again coming back to your back porch, I really like that. I wish there was a name for it, because you use it not only for good times, bad times, but also for team building. And I liked how, like you said, any operation that was coming up, you got the guys together, especially your senior NCOs you had, and laid out what was expected, the plan, and you actually asked, what are y'all feeling about it? Do y'all have anything that we might adjust on, do better? So even though you're the president, so to speak, you're still asking, everyone's opinion on things to see if it could be handled a little bit better.
You can't stand on ego. It's a dangerous business. You have to pick the brains of everybody on the team. If they have a concern, that's probably a legitimate concern. You can't just take the position that I'm a lieutenant and everybody has to do exactly what I say. I often asked, how do you feel about this? What can we do better? Is there some weakness we have in what we're doing? Do you understand the map? When I brought the map out, did you understand what the patrol route was? What I would test them sometimes. I'd ask, what's the frequency for Arnica Delta, which is the artillery battery that would be supporting us? What's the call sign for Arnica Delta? Everybody had to know that and sort of commit it to memory, because when you're out on patrol, you can't rely on just one person. It's a team effort, total team effort. Just like playing a sport, a team sport is a team sport, and force recon on patrol is a team sport. Pretty dangerous sport, by the way. Contact
Absolutely.
sport.
The deadliest, you could say. I mean, and you had a very open door process, or open door policy, I should say, and some guys came in not only that were beginning to get a little afraid, and asking, can we maybe calm down a bit, because y'all were getting after it, and some guys were a little worried. You handled that wonderfully. And then I believe you had one Marine that before we get into the questions, that really struck a note with me, that how you handled it. He was very, very religious. He felt like his number was coming up. He didn't. I believe it was Tony Allen. If I'm apologize if I'm mistaken, the Marine. And he came and basically laid his soul out for you. If I'm not mistaken, he asked if he could call it a day on recon. Didn't he?
Yes, he did. He was Tony Allen was from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a city boy. Um, Pretty good field Marine. He was getting short. He had about a month to go, maybe a little bit more. He came to me actually in tears. We were alone on the back porch. He wanted to see me alone. So I says, "Come on the back porch," because that's where I talk to everybody. And we were on the back porch, and he began to cry. He told me that he was convinced that he was going to die on the next patrol, that he was worn out, that he couldn't take the stress any longer of being out on patrol. And there was a lot of stress. I mean, we all felt a lot of stress. And I understood how he felt. He was also very religious. Talked to me that he felt that God had told him that it was his time was up on earth if he didn't get out of the field. Well, I have a problem with that because I'm in a leadership position. I can't allow Marines to get out of the field just because they say so. If I do it for him, I'm going to have to do it for everybody else. We did take people out of the field when they had about 2 weeks left to go. We didn't send them out on patrol when they had 2 weeks left, but he had over a month. And I wrestled with this. I said, gee, I just can't allow him to do this, or I'm going to be dealing with a lot more, because I knew a lot of our Marines were under a lot of psychological stress from being out there alone almost in enemy-held territory. So it struck me, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do for you, Alan. We have a requirement to send a team up to Hill 452. It's not in our platoon, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll let you go with that other platoon up to Hill 452. That's a milk run. That's a safe place. You'll be up there eating sea rations for a week. You'll come back. You'll be so short then that you'll be out of the field for good. I did that, and sadly, very sadly, while he was up there, lightning struck the top of Hill 452, and it killed another Marine, and it blew Alan off the top of the hill. And of course, the hill was very precipitous. There was a very steep cliff that was about 90 feet high on one side, and he went right over the side and was killed. Just a terrible accident. He was the only man in my platoon that died while I was in charge of the platoon, and I felt real bad about it. Tried to meet with his mother later on in Philadelphia, in West Philadelphia, pretty rough neighborhood. Went to see her and offer my condolences. When I got back, she wouldn't speak to me. She closed the door in my face. She said, "You kill him, you take care of him." Some comment like that. She was very, very angry that her son had died in Vietnam, especially under those tragic circumstances.
I remember that last part, and that's just heartbreaking. And you can't fault a mother for losing a son, but I hate she treated you like that.
I understand it. I understand it.
You made it clear you held no ill feelings toward her for that at all.
No.
Okay, we've got a few more. Jason, I know you were asking this one. Let me get to that one for you. It's a good one. Who was the smallest in height and weight Force Recon Marine that you saw?
That was a fellow named Gaston, and he was there when I first arrived. He went out with us on just a couple of patrols. I think about 3 or 4, and then he went home. But Gaston was probably no more than 5'4" at the most. Probably weighed 90 pounds at the most. Just a real small guy, but gutsy guy. Um, when I went out on a patrol with him, he actually had not heat stroke, but he had a problem. He passed out from the heat, didn't drink enough water. We had to stop. That was in Elephant Valley. He recovered. Tough guy, didn't want a medevac, and he continued on a patrol. He was very, very small, carried a big pack. He carried a pack just like the rest of us, about 80 pounds, which was almost his weight. And he did a good job. Gaston was a good Marine.
And who was the biggest Force Recon man that you can remember?
Oh, that's Willie Williams. Willie Williams was from New York. He probably was about 6 foot tall, but he was built like an NFL linebacker. He probably weighed about 250 pounds, all muscle, all muscle. He was so strong that he could carry the radio plus a total of 12 sea ration meals in his pack. I don't know how he got them all in there, but he did. But he was a brute of a man, sweet kind of person. I don't like to use an expression for a Marine, but his character was such that he was just laid back, easygoing, joking, never caused any kind of problem. I mean, if you told him to jump off of a cliff, he would jump off and smile doing it. I mean, the guy was really great. Unfortunately, we lost contact with him. We've never really located him. We've tried our best, but he was the biggest. I mean, he was big and strong. He had arms the size of my calves. And that's how big he was.
I think we've got a photo of him
Yeah, I think
in
we
the
do.
slot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. We'll get to bring that one up. We've got one, two, three or four more good questions, and I think we'll get to into the pictures to where the stories can come out since we've almost hit an hour and a half here already. What was the most effective air asset you got to call in your experience? I know this can vary depending on the situation and area you were operating.
Well, we had access to just about everything from Army gunships to Marine gunships, Marine air. We had all kinds of fixed wing. When we operated outside the artillery fan, far out west, the only recourse we had was air support. And even from Da Nang, a jet took about 30 minutes to get to us from strip alert. So um, I found that it varied from unit to unit. Helicopter support was amazing. The bravery of the helicopters who came in to insert us and extract us was incredibly brave. Those Marine helicopters were incredible. In terms of fixed wing, I thought Marine air was best. And I say that because Marine air is focused on the infantryman, it's focused on ground support. And when we called in airstrikes with using Marine F4s or A1s or whatever Marine um, fixed wing aircraft we had, they'd come in low and accurate. They could drop ordnance very, very close to us and still not hurt us. Navy aircraft were okay, but they were not as good at ground support. Some of the Air Force were good at it, but some of them were not so good. We had some bad situations with Air Force air that were not really as good as the Marine air at close air support. The ARVN, the South Vietnamese Air Force were very good. They had the A1 Sky Raider, and that's a slow flying armored plane that carried about 2,300 pounds of ordnance. I mean, it was really a hog, and we could stack them up above us, and they'd come in one at a time, and they were very accurate. They'd drop 500-pound bombs with very good accuracy. They were also good with napalm. I thought that probably they were as good as the Marine fixed wing at providing air support.
Let's see here. I've got one of the old
There it
low and
is.
slows.
Yep.
I mean, look at that. I mean, we hear, I've heard it from y'all too, and the SOG guys will say, I mean, they can stay on station so long. They've got a
Mhm.
just a absolute menagerie of arms on them, and let alone even if they didn't have napalm or CBUs or what have you, the cannon alone, them getting low enough with the cannon, they can just absolutely wreak havoc on whatever they're, it was y'all's version of the A-10 in essence.
Yeah, it was outstanding, outstanding. It was a carrier aircraft. It was designed for the latter stages of World War II. Never really employed during World War II, I believe, but saw extensive service in Korea for a while. But it could really do the job for ground troops.
Did Gosh, I just went blank on what I was going to say until I remember that. How close were y'all getting gun runs and airstrikes in? I remember one of the photos that comes up is very close.
Well, it depended. It depended on where the enemy was. If the enemy was close to us, we called it in real close, danger close. Uh, there were many instances where I called it in where shrapnel from 500-pound bombs were going over our head. We had to get down prone to make sure that we weren't wounded by our own airstrikes. Uh, Nape, same way. When Nape came in, we could feel the heat. That was that close. So yeah, the answer to that is pretty damn close.
Well, what about? I just remembered what I was going to ask you. Didn't you actually get to use the USS New Jersey?
I did
Call it.
not use it. I did not use it. I landed on it. I saw it being used, firing into Gonoy Island, which is south of Da Nang. I saw what it could do. I was in an aircraft above it, and we landed on it. We were dropping somebody off that was supposed to a naval officer that needed to be dropped off on the New Jersey. When that fired a broadside at Gonoy Island, the aircraft, which was probably almost a mile away in the air, you could feel the helicopter just jerk because of the power of those rounds.
I mean,
Remember,
it
that's a
was.
2,000-pound bomb impacting in an area that would just obliterate everything the size of a football field.
I think someone described, imagine a bomb the size of a Volkswagen Beetle coming at you.
2,000 pounds. Mm-hmm.
Man, we've got some interesting stuff. I actually found when you were talking about some of your gear, didn't you buy that Arvin rucksack for like $3 at the shop by
Yes.
Reasoner?
Mhm. Yeah, I
Okay,
did.
I
I was
I
told
think
to
I
go down there and buy it from Mr. Smart. And Mr. Smart was, and I have more stories to tell about him in my second book, but Mr. Smart ran a little shop down there that sold Arvin gear. The Arvin would sell it to him and then he'd sell it to the Marines. And we all had them.
I could have sworn I
My
might.
first
I
my
want.
first pack, by the way, was an NVA pack. First
Okay,
couple of patrols I took out, I used an NVA pack.
is that him?
No, that is not him. Mm-mm.
Okay. This is one. This is a shop outside Reasoner where they sell clearly Marine knickknacks, and I didn't know if that might have been him or not. But very interesting stuff, guys. Again, we can't get into everything. The photo part is going to be great because we're going to hit a lot of interesting stories. But he talks about getting his NBA pack, the Arvin pack, some of the East German equipment they come across. I mean, it's just an outstanding book. It is by far one of my favorite, if not my favorite Force Recon book. Um, let's see here. Great question, Daniel. Did you sleep on the ground or did you use a hammock to get away from creepy crawlers at night?
Slept on the ground always.
That's what I was thinking. Would y'all? Was it literally y'all circling around, laying down in your gear, or did y'all make a camp, so to speak? Or
We had a policy. We had a policy that we followed religiously. One is we always tried to find a place with a lot of dense foliage, and we would crawl into that foliage and set up a harbor site. The reason we were in dense foliage is that we could hear anybody coming towards us. They'd have to break brush to do it. And that would give us the advantage that we could fire on them before they could even see us. The second reason we went into an area of deep brush is we could make a 360 defense with just a few men. We take the 8 men and we put them in a 360-degree sort of perimeter with their feet outboard and their heads inboard. And the reason we could do that is we could pass the radio around at night. Everybody had about an hour of watch on the radio, and we could just move that. The radio would be in the very center, and we would just move the handset from one person to the next. And that was another reason. And plus, with their heads all together, when we would stand up, we'd have our weapons at the ready. We'd be able to fire outboard.
Okay, that was basically what this question was getting to. Your was there only, how was your security percentage? You said everyone would sleep, or not everyone at one time. Did y'all have 2 guys, 3 guys up, or how would the sleep process go?
It depended on the situation. If we had not had contact, I would, and because of the stress and what we were doing, a lot of people were very, very tired. Sometimes we didn't eat. So if there was no contact, I would allow 1 man up. If it was a little more dangerous, I would put 2 men up. There were times when I had everybody up because we had NVA voices very, very close to us or something like that, and we'd have everybody up. But normally, I would say on most of our patrols, it was 1 or 2 on radio watch at night. One problem with the radio is why we like 2 people is because when you have that handset in your ear, you can't hear anything else. And having another person up and alert, they can pick up anybody trying to break brush coming towards us.
Makes perfect sense. That and you said you much like the Sogmen, y'all try and get into a semi-brushy state to where anytime something, animal or otherwise, is trying to get to y'all or even near y'all can hear stuff breaking to where you're immediately up and at them, ready to go.
That's correct. Yeah, always.
Excellent. We've got a few more questions along that line. How close were y'all inserted to your target areas that you were going for?
That all depends. We didn't want to go in right close to it because that would alert anybody who was there that we were coming. A lot of times it was very difficult to find insertion zones. If you read my book, you'll see how difficult it was sometimes to find an adequate zone that we could get into. Usually we went into a zone with only 1 chopper could fit into. Oftentimes we had to rappel into. Today they use the fast rope system, but we would rappel into an LZ or really just a bomb crater. But we always tried to locate during our map reconnaissance and when we looked at the old patrol orders or photos that we got from the G2 of the operating area, we tried to find areas where, from looking at the map or the photo of landing zones that were fairly close. When I say fairly close, within about 1,000 meters of the objective. A lot of our patrols didn't really have a target. They were we would go in and we would put OPs on a trail, or we would just try to uncover a base area or uncover a bivouac area or a supply dump or something like that. So some of the times the targets were rather nebulous, really. We would just know that we were going to conduct a surveillance operation in that area, general area. We had what we call a no-fire zone, which was usually on a map, it was 2,000 meters by 3,000 meters. And by no-fire zone, that meant that anybody who wanted to fire artillery or use airstrikes in that area had to clear it with us first.
Mike, great question. How many times were y'all shot out of a target as y'all got ready to go in?
We were shot out when we went into, well, it depended. Happy Valley and in base area 112, or out near the Laotian border. We were shot out of zones. Um, you know, at the most on 2 attempts. We would either abort after 2 attempts or we would try to find an alternate location that was further away, someplace where we wouldn't be shot out of. I always tried to get in because I knew if we didn't get in that day, I'd have to go in the next day. Might as well get it over with. And so I usually tried to, even if we took a little bit of fire coming in, I said, go ahead, let's do it. We also had a system where we would leapfrog. We would land in a zone, pretending we would lower the ramp, but no one would get out, hoping that the enemy would observe that and think we got out. Then we go on to another place and land in an alternate landing zone. We're always trying to fool the enemy because the enemy did have both trail watchers and LZ watchers. And oftentimes they would not engage us because there was only usually 2 or 3 of these people watching us, but they would go back and report to their units, and then the units would be coming after us.
Man, oh man. And guys, there, like we said, there are some, well, you're going to get some really great stories, but I mean, the Killer Kane was very, very busy, and they mixed it up a lot with the NVA. Y'all need to get these 2 books if you don't have them. Did you ever encounter booby traps, tripwires, snap traps?
Yes, I did. I saw punji stakes routinely, especially on the perimeter of a base camp that we would uncover. Doc Connor had a very bad situation. We were on top of a hill, and all of a sudden, I was on the radio, and somebody came up to me and said, we always whispered. He whispered to me that Doc Connor had stepped on a landmine. I said, I didn't hear it go off. And he said, well, it hasn't gone off yet. So we went up to where Doc was standing, and Doc obviously was pretty anxious. And he said he had stepped on a bouncing Betty. He was pretty sure it was a bouncing Betty. He heard it click, and he knew as soon as he lifted his foot, it would go off. So I was not a combat engineer. I didn't know really how to get rid of a bouncing Betty. But what I did was I said, Doc, I hope you don't lose a foot, but I definitely don't want you to lose your life. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all our packs and we're going to wrap them around you. And I'm going to have you fall backwards away from that thing. So when it bounces up and goes off, the blast will go into those packs, not to you. I don't know whether he had a lot of confidence in what I had to say, but that's what we did. And we all got back in defilade because we knew what a bouncing Betty could do. And so he fell backwards. It didn't go off. Fortunately, it did not go off. But we could see the prongs there, and they're probably ultra sensitive because he did hear it click. So what I did is I crawled back up there, put an M26 hand grenade next to it, pulled the pin, got back into defilade, and we blew it up. And it blew up big time. After we blew it up, we heard people cheering in the village down below us, which really pissed me off. They thought they had killed a couple of Marines. And but no, Doc was not hurt at all.
I'll never forget reading that and then finally getting to hear you tell me that for the first time, and then Doc mentioning it, and woo, was he the pucker factor with him, it was out of this world. He
Yeah.
you can hear the excitement in his voice still when he talks about that one. We've got 2 more, and we can get into the great stories because some of these questions will be answered in the story picture portion. Any good stories of insects or animals? Which there is.
Oh, there's all kinds of stories about that, including tigers and rock apes and whatnot. encountered elephants twice, once in Elephant Valley and once in the Quaisans. They were out in the western portion of them. You could hear them trumpeting. They were warning us because they knew Marines had guns and those elephants were smart. They stayed away from us, but they came very close. In one case, I guess they were no more than 100 yards away from us. Trying to think of we had an incident with a very unusual bird. That was the one of the tigers that we killed, or unit killed. I had a very unusual incident with a very large bird. I guess I tried to identify it later on, but it was large. It was like a condor, that big. It had about a 6 foot, maybe even larger wingspan. It didn't like where we were. We were occupying a cave where evidently it was his home. He didn't like it, and he wanted us to get out of there. But fortunately for us, he didn't try to get into the cave with us. But he was making a lot of noise and flying very, very close to us. And some of my Marines thought maybe we needed to shoot it down. I said, no, we can't do that. It'll give our position away. So it was moderately frightening because it was so big and so aggressive.
Yeah, but Force Recon had a lot of. It seems like more so than anybody, at least from my reading, talking to gentlemen. That y'all had more run-ins with tigers than I think the Marines as a whole than anybody else that I've seen. I mean, there's several terrible stories of guys getting carried off at night by tigers, and several lucky stories. That one, the picture I just showed, was not a happy ending, but they did get it. But a few of the men did get lucky and cut it down before it got any of the guys. So there's a lot of bad animal stories, to be quite honest. Daniel would like to know, did the team have a running password if one of y'all got off E&Eing and needed to approach the other element of the team?
No, we never really had that. We, on a couple of occasions, we took clickers with us, mechanical clickers in the case that happened. But generally, we did not do that. We had a rule too: we would stay together. We would, no matter what, we would stay together, because if we had an engagement, probably what would happen is somebody would be wounded, and we'd never leave a wounded behind. Same with somebody who was killed. We would never abandon a Marine who was killed or wounded. So we knew we weren't going to be E&Eing. I told my men we weren't going to be E&Eing. We're going to stay together. We're either going to survive together or die together.
That's definitely what the Marines are known for. Never leaving a man behind. This is the last question before we get into our photo section. What was the smallest amount of men you took on a mission, and what was the largest?
The smallest was 6. The largest was 12. I took my entire team out, my entire platoon out. I could have taken 15, but I took 12, and that was the largest I took. And I took that out on 2 occasions, once to do a BDA and once to occupy a defensive position overlooking the Quaisan Valley to support Union 2 operations.
And you mentioned 12. I thought for sure one time you actually did take 13 or 14, but I guess I messed up and got my numbers wrong. But yeah, I remember you taking, I think it was dubbed the All-Star team, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was one of the All-Star teams. That was both Brisbane and Killer Kane out. And that was in support of Operation Pecos, which was out in Happy Valley. And that's where we ambushed the 402nd Sapper Battalion and captured all their documents, all their rice, all their weapons, all their equipment, and even some gold bars, which were not reported.
We're gonna get into some of those great photos here. Jason, I'll save that question towards the end. Well, we're to close out the show, guys. We've got some amazing collection of photos that Doc Connor and Mr. Andy has sent me, and we are gonna go through them and get a little bit of stories and a little bit of show and tell, so to speak.
Okay, this is an insert on top of Hill 452. Pretty hairy. The helicopter at high altitude has to hover, and you have to exit the aircraft with a week's worth of supplies out the side door. Very, very frightening endeavor. Later on, the engineers built a platform up there, lower down, that was used. It was capable of having a CH-46 lower its rear ramp onto it, and that was much improved. This is really dangerous stuff on Hill 452. Hill 452 was a radio relay site, and it was on three sides. It was precipitous cliffs, like I said before, 90 feet high, and never really attacked by the enemy because it was just way too high and too difficult to get to.
Man, that is a hairy looking insert. I've spoken to a few men that were talking about being inserted and something happening where they came out the side and were getting shot up. And after they had sat there for a minute, and the guy had his spaghetti and meatballs, and I had to instantly run back to the helicopter and smashed his spaghetti and meatballs in his shirt. And when he got on the helicopter and pulled it out, it looked like guts coming out, and everyone started freaking out, and he started eating the rest of his spaghetti and meatballs before, so he wouldn't go to waste. Let's see. There we go. Beautiful
Okay, this
sights.
is a taken from Hill 452 and looking north towards Charlie Ridge. And you can see you're up pretty high. You'd think you're in aircraft, but really you're up on top of a mountain, really, that's 452 meters above sea level.
And just to show everybody so they can keep in mind, because some of these are going to be action shot, guys, just to let y'all know where when these names come up, keep Happy Valley, keep Charlie Ridge in mind, keep Yellow Brick Road, because this is where you're about to see actual patrol photos from. So remember that if you can. Let me get to the next one. Some beautiful photos.
Okay, this is Elephant Valley. This is where we did see elephants. This is the old French road that was no longer used. You can see that at one time it was a pretty wide road that the French used, but after 1966 it was too unsafe, and the jungle had pretty much taken over the road. It was called Elephant Valley for a good reason. There are a lot of elephants in that valley, and this road often had a lot of elephant dung all over it.
And were they? I can imagine there were wild ones, but these were all beast of burden for the VC and NVA that you were.
No, they were not. They were just wild elephants. I never encountered the enemy using elephants. They pretty much were foot mobile. They used bicycles on occasion. We would find a bicycle, but further out west, you could hear the trucks that were coming across the border. But they never used elephants that I know of. I never saw them used or heard of any of our patrols encountering them. This again is on Elephant Valley on that same road, and that is Sergeant Pugh. Later went on to become a mercenary in the Middle East. We lost contact with him. He guarded oil fields in Kuwait right after he left the Marine Corps, and we lost track of him. He was a very good field Marine, and we're taking a break, just waiting for the helicopters to come in on that road that is in Elephant Valley.
If you notice, guys, everybody's in their OD greens there. No tiger stripe. Well, that actually might look like a set of tigers right there, but And I remember, speaking of CS, is this y'all's gas mask that y'all would carry, or were the gas masks not every mission?
I think the gas mask was down lower on his body. We usually carried it the same place. It was always carried on the left-hand side on our thigh, at least on my team when we went out. So I think either he's taken it off for some reason. Sometimes people use the gas mask to put other items in there, like cigarettes and things like that. That was supposedly I wasn't supposed to know about that.
Speaking of cigarettes, what was your, as team leader? What could guys smoke when they were out on breaks, or what was that?
Again, it all depended on the tactical situation. Most of the time, I forbid them to smoke, but if it was a milk run and we had no engagement, I allowed them to take a cigarette. They had to be careful where we did it. We usually did it in an area where we would move out very quickly, because you leave that smell of that tobacco, they know where you are, so you have to get away from there. Probably 75% of my patrols, I never allowed them to take a radio with them, a pocket radio, or to take alcohol with them, or to take cigarettes. Most of my Marines did not smoke, but a couple of them did. And I would, on occasion, because of the tension and whatnot, they sort of needed a cigarette. So I let them have it.
Wow.
That's John Slowick from Philadelphia. He was one of the 3 really good point men I had. This is taken out near the Laotian border along the Yellow Brick Road.
Now, he's the gentleman we saw earlier with the stoner, was he not?
No, that was Hager.
No. Hager, okay.
Yeah, Hager. This is Sergeant Hawkshurst. He was an assistant patrol leader, but then became a patrol leader after I left. A really bright guy, very smart, very savvy. He could take over for me anytime and do a really terrific job. Very, very capable Marine. This, I believe, is out on another patrol out in Happy Valley.
Yeah, he's got a few notable mission incidents in the book. Sounds like he was one heck of a Marine.
This is a picture taken of another team. It was given to Doc, I think. This is a battalion team that was on a hill near the Ongthu Slope, which is overlooking Anwar combat base. And also this guy has got his binoculars looking at Charlie Ridge, which is over on the left. You might ask, why do we have pictures, so many photos? Well, a lot of times people in the rear didn't believe what we saw. So I took a 35 millimeter Canon with me, small camera, and I took pictures on just about every patrol when we found something of interest, because sometimes people didn't believe what we saw. And I wanted to make sure that we had the photographic proof of it. We had an incident early on of a possible Caucasian. And fortunately, we had one of our team members, Dave Powell, had a camera, and he took some pictures of it. Unfortunately, it was at long range. It was difficult to make out whether or not he was a Caucasian or not. He was certainly wearing a different uniform and much bigger. That went to Camp Smith in Hawaii for analysis. We never heard back about whether or not they were able to determine whether that was a Caucasian with the enemy or not.
Wow. Let's see here. Sorry about that. Still getting used to.
Okay, this is interesting. This was a picture photo we took out near what was in my book I describe as the hidden village. It was a village that didn't exist on a map. We had to walk through it. I mean, it was really hairy walking through it without being detected. We got to one side of it. We found a huge cache of rice hidden away. You can see Corporal Barecki is looking at it. I believe we put a thermite grenade in it to try to destroy it. I'm there on the right. I'm overlooking looking at it. These were uh, pretty. This was about a ton of rice in several different containers, both metal and concrete, and they were covered by brush. And you can see the brush; it's dyed. It's over there on the left-hand side. We called in airstrikes on it because we just couldn't destroy enough of it with a thermite grenade.
Nah, a ton of rice, literally a ton.
Oh yeah, a ton. There's a lot. This is a picture of a hill that all I can remember is that 81 is the top of it. This is where we went through the vineyard and saw the NVA coming by. Then we got up to the top of this hill. We got into a cave, and that's the cave that where the unusual large bird took umbrage at our occupying his nesting place.
Wow,
We
that
later
is
we later on extraction. The enemy was waiting for us. We extracted. If you walk down the right hand side of that ridge line, there was an open area that you probably can see on the very lower side. The enemy was waiting for us there, and we got into a rather difficult firefight. Fortunately for us, we were in a large bomb crater, and the enemy was not able to hit us, but they tried to ambush us. Fortunately, I believe it was, I think it was either Russell or Slowick who observed them before they initiated the ambush, and we were able to take them under fire first. And that was the closest we ever came to being ambushed.
yeah. I mean, yeah, y'all even up until then, y'all had laid some very successful ambush, and I thought to myself, "Gosh, they're about to get ambushed themselves right here after all of that crawling through that vineyard, staying quiet as they possibly can."
Okay, this is Happy Valley. The northern, the top of that photo is a pass that goes towards Da Nang and through a place called Mortar Valley. This is Happy Valley, and you can see all the bomb craters, including B-52 bomb craters. This was Happy Valley was an area where we always made contact. I don't think I ever went into Happy Valley without making close contact with the NVA. A regiment of the 2nd NVA Division bivouacked or stayed in this area. They were spread out in small groups because they're afraid of these B-52 raids. But whenever we landed in there, we always made contact. We ran into groups of NVA anywhere from 5 or 6 to platoon or company size.
And I believe you said y'all, insert down low and in the open area and start making your way up to the top of the mountain here. I can
That's right.
only
That's
imagine what
usually
that.
what we did. Yes.
Gosh Almighty.
Okay, this is out near Laos. This is the yellow brick road. Where this picture was taken is probably about 5 miles from the Laotian border. And we're walking along a stream that runs adjacent to the yellow brick road.
And if you see right here, guys, this is all water they're about to be entering right here from there. It's all looks about knee, thigh high, deep water they're about to get into. And if you notice their camouflage, how well it's working, and everybody's packs, they are blending in quite well.
This is Corporal Garner. He was my primary radio man on most of my patrols. Very, very intelligent young man, capable of taking charge whenever we had a contact. He had a map that he knew exactly where we were. He knew that he would memorize the grid coordinates. He memorized all the frequencies. I didn't have to tell him anything. I just say, either get us Artie or get us air, or let the relay know where we are, and he would do it. Very, very capable radio man, and really helped us out quite a bit. This was taken out west also. We had just crossed over from a bivouac area, a North Vietnamese bivouac area that was semi-occupied. We heard people talking, and we crossed over and went down the side of a hill. And here he is. He's trying to get our relay site so they know where we are. And actually, when he's on this radio, we were unable to get. We were in a dead space area, and we remained there for almost a day without any radio contact.
Gosh almighty. Oop. Let's get that to where it'll. There we go.
Okay, that's Lance Corporal Garner, or Gardner. Gardner was a Marine who was with us on half of our patrols. He went home. Unfortunately, he got into some trouble when he got home. I don't know all the details, but he was involved in a murder case, I believe. Now, in this picture, you have a hard time picking people out, but there are two people there, and that's the beauty of having good camouflage. This is the Yellow Brick Road.
And look how dense that is, even though it's quote unquote a road, guys. I mean, they are in the thick of it. And without a good point man and rear point, you can only imagine how dangerous this could be if you didn't have somebody experienced at the front and at the rear keeping an eye on things. Oh, that's a duplicate. Sorry. Wait. There we go with our stoner that we saw earlier. My favorite photo.
That's my entire platoon. That's Killer Kane in Brisbane. And we just come in from ambushing the 402nd Sapper Battalion. And that's some of the equipment and weapons that we captured. Sadly, very sadly, we captured a lot more equipment and things, but they disappeared. We were not brought out of the field. Another team came in, picked up a gear that we had captured, took it back to Reisner. And while I was at Reisner, about 75% of it disappeared. It was used as souvenirs, I think, from division staff and some others. There was another reason why I was irate. Those flags, by the way, you see in the background are the original flags we captured from that enemy unit. We copied those flags because the commanding general wanted to have those flags in his office, and he requested that we turn them over to him. I didn't have a say in this. My commanding officer, King Dixon, who was a former All-American football player for the University of South Carolina, that's him on the right, and General Robertsall wanted the flags. So King Dixon, he was a very smart man. He took the original flags into Da Nang to a tailor. The tailor overnight made duplicate flags, and we took the duplicate flags, turned them into General Robertsall. Here you see the presentation at the headquarters, and he knew that he thought that they were the originals. The originals were lost for a while. We didn't know where they went, but they finally ended up in King Dixon's office at the University of South Carolina, where he was the director of athletics. He kept them for us and put them in his office.
That is easily one of my it's my favorite photo of y'all, and it's easily one of my favorite stories, because you were everybody was pretty concerned that they're going to take the flags like they did the weapons, which in the book we're not going to again go into everything, but Andy and the guys had a real issue of when they get a big hit and come home with weapons, that the rear echelon guys would start taking it and all that, and Andy and the guys would use that, as he said earlier, would trade for uniforms, party supplies, food, whatever. And these guys are getting it before, and some tried, it seemed like, taking credit for it at one occasion, but they'd take whatever they could, and before Andy and them could get back with their own stuff to secure. It's very wild. But you kind of fixed that, though. They y'all started making sure y'all got the pick of the litter and put back a few times. I remember a very good story. I think it was a Soviet PPSH, I think, or one of the more rarities that y'all got broke down and put in your pack, broken down to where you wouldn't even have to send it in with the the regular haul, so y'all could keep it?
Yeah, I was kind of naive when I went to Vietnam. I believed that you turn over everything of intelligence value to the G2, and it was a source of concern among some of my Marines because I pretty strictly enforced that. But I finally realized I got so fed up with people stealing the stuff that these fine young men captured. I broke the rules, and I said, okay, from now on, you pick what you want. I'm not going to even report it. You put it in your pack, hide it, and as far as I know, it never happened, and that's what we did. We captured probably 40 or 50 weapons that we never reported.
Oh yeah, I mean, just off this haul, the amount of weapons, not the ones that y'all were able to keep or get, but I mean the overall haul of this, the RPDs, the AKs, the SKSs, the launchers. I mean, y'all really hit it to the sappers. And well, they weren't all there, but you got the headquarters nonetheless. And some of those photos will pop back up here in a minute, guys.
This is Willie Williams from New York, the strong man, the biggest guy I had in the platoon. A wonderful person. Wish we could contact him. We just tried and tried and tried, but he sort of disappeared after he left the Marine Corps.
It's a shame. That's a great photo of him.
That is Lieutenant Joe Taussig. Taussig was a classmate of mine at the Naval Academy, the youngest in my class. Brilliant. I think he was third in our class. Real bright guy, not like me. He excelled in academics. He went to language school for Vietnamese after graduation and the basic school. So he arrived in country 6 months after me. I took him out on his first patrol, snap-in patrol. He became a patrol leader. Later on, went to the infantry and fought in the Battle of Hue with the 5th Marines. His family goes back to the Revolutionary War. He was the first one in his family who was a Marine. All the others were naval officers, and there were ships named after the Taussig family. Even the secretary or the CNO of the Navy was a relative of his, Admiral Carney. So he came from a distinguished Navy family. He's
That's
now a very successful and wealthy entrepreneur who lives in Switzerland, and he and his wife are currently at Harvard for some reason. I'm not sure why. They're there for a year or two, but brilliant person. One of the smartest people I've ever met.
I mean, there's such a great personal family history with a lot of these guys, and then just all around very interesting gentlemen. I mean, you've got undercover geniuses in there. You've got men that like him that their family goes back to the Revolutionary War. You've got Captain Walker, I believe, who was the heir to the the liquor fortune. I forgot what liquor it was, but very, very interesting group of men out there. Very.
This is a picture taken from a hill in a mountain, actually, on top of Base Area 116, looking north towards Da Nang. And there were 2 lakes that are there. This was a kind of a cakewalk patrol. We went up into Base Area 116. There were no NVA there. We found a lot of base camps and the like, but it was a pretty easy patrol. We did see the enemy down below us near those lakes, and we called in artillery and airstrikes on them, but they were too far away for us to go down there and do a BDA.
That's one thing, guys. If when you get the book, you will see how effective they are with artillery.
This is our parachute training to be conducted at Red Beach. I think I made 8 jumps training there when I was off of patrol. The parachute capability of our unit was mixed. We had about half of our unit was parachute qualified, another half were scuba qualified. Some of us were qualified in both scuba and parachute training or parachute capabilities. We were told we were doing training for a possible combat jump into the Ashow Valley. Fortunately, that never took place. However, another combat jump, was made into Happy Valley, and that ended in disaster. And we lost one of the participants. Doc Laporte went missing from that jump, and several of Marines were injured, including Bobby Garcia, my really good point man, who broke his ankle, I believe, and had to be medevaced. And he returned to the United States. Corporal Slowick, I believe, was also on that parachute jump. I was not chosen because I had a total of about 30 jumps under my belt, and my platoon sergeant, Gunnery Sergeant Webb, had 1,000 jumps under his belt. So there was no question that he was going to be the jump master and the leader of the combat jump.
Wow. Very interesting.
And
Great
there's
shot.
another picture of us going out the back of I think, I'm not sure, that's either a C-130 or it's possibly a Mohawk.
Yeah, it looks pretty big. I'm guessing 130 on the side, based on the sides of the and the floor. Just a guess though.
That is Mai Lee. Mai Lee was the waitress at the First Division Officers Club. Because we were located adjacent to First Division, I often would go to their club. They had a movie every night. I like to go up and watch the movies. Got to know Mai Lee and another waitress there named Zin. Both of them were wonderful people. I went to Mai Lee's wedding. She married a Army Air Force sergeant. I also attended the christening of their firstborn child. She and her husband bought land. He wanted to be a farmer. And when the communists took over, everybody lost track of them. We don't know what happened to her or to Zen. Zen was also married to a Arvin Air Force sergeant, and she was in Tan Son Nhut Air Base when the communists took Saigon. Neither one of them, no one knows where they were. We suspect that hopefully they are all still alive somewhere in South Vietnam or in Vietnam.
Gosh, that was a tough part of the book. You made a lot of great Vietnamese friends, and especially when you hooked up with the church and all that. Yeah, it's a very touching portion of the book. Both
Yeah,
books.
all the two women I mentioned were both Roman Catholics, and because I'm a Roman Catholic, I went to mass. I think I may have even gone to a mass with Mai Lee and her husband, but I'm not totally sure. But I made a lot of friends, and it actually served me well because very few Americans had Vietnamese friends or knew them, had any kind of personal relationship with them. But I made probably a dozen close Vietnamese friends, and they informed my opinion of the Vietnamese. I have no negative feelings towards the Vietnamese at all. Very positive in many respects. I respect their love of family, their consideration, their politeness, their hospitality. I was always very well treated by the Vietnamese that I knew.
And it's in Rice Paddy Recon, the young lady whose house is burnt down. That's another touching story. You really go out of your way to check on your friends, and it's a great portion of that book
Yeah,
as well.
that's a very, very sad story.
Very.
I felt real bad about what happened to her father, and actually what happened to her as well. So it was a sad story. She was a good friend, and so was her husband, and both of them suffered greatly because of the communists.
Very absolute resilient people. I a quick question came up. Did the NVA wear brown or green, or did they have green and gray uniforms? Uh,
They had a mixture of uniforms. We saw all kinds. I saw them in black pajamas. I saw them in tan uniforms. I saw them in their that gray with pith helmets. I saw them with a mixture. I saw one. I actually shot one in tiger stripes out in Happy Valley. He was wearing, I think, American tiger stripes. They looked like tiger stripes. In fact, I was hesitant to shoot him because I thought maybe he was a SF long range recon person, but I later found out it was not. He was just somebody probably dressed in tiger stripes to avoid uh, whatever he wanted to avoid.
and in the book, there are several occasions to where you guys do come across Vietnamese with American gear, weapons, and stuff like that that pop up all along the way. So very interesting stuff. Nonetheless, I can see why you were a little hesitant there. Um, this is a great one, another great team shot of y'all, and y'all would get. There's a great book or incident in the book where some Vietnamese are around. This is not that particular incident, but the people are very afraid of Mr. Andy and Killer Kane, and there was actually a rumor going around about them being called the Monkey Men, that they only walked through the trees and would quickly grab the enemy and eat them and devour them, and they'd never be seen again. So you can imagine the looks they'd get when they'd be around normal people like this.
Yeah, we had just come off of a patrol. We were filthy. We smelled terrible. We had all kinds of face paint and stuff all over our faces, and we were sitting down just like this in a place very similar to this, waiting for a flight back from Anwa to Camp Reasoner, and waiting also to go back were a couple of Vietnamese women and their children, and you could just see the abject fear in their face when they saw us. And I asked Sergeant Pugh, who was could speak Vietnamese. I said, well, these people are really frightened by us. Would you please try to, tell them not to worry. We're not going to hurt them. And he said, "Oh no, they're not worried about that. They know that you're monkey men." And I said, "What do you mean by monkey men?" He said, "Well, they say that they know that you people can walk through the trees like monkeys." And I said, "No, they really believe that?" And he said, "Yeah, that's why they're afraid of you. They think you're some kind of ghost."
And y'all did. There's a great book, and I wish it's on my bookshelf. I'll link that too. Called Green Ghost.
Yeah.
That's another Force Recon name that was bestowed upon them. Um, oh, there's a good. And guys, if you notice the packs again, look how heavy. Look at the color. That's blending right in.
Yeah, that's Corporal Lance Corporal Gillespie. He's from Gloucester, New Jersey. Unfortunately, he died about 20 years ago from cancer. His family had no idea he had ever done anything like this. Tried to get a hold of his family to inform them that he was really fine, a recon Marine, but they didn't want to talk to me. Really, they avoided talking to me. Didn't want me to talk to them about what he had done.
And I'm still amazed at that. That and I know some men just don't speak about it for personal reasons, and others just don't want to come off as braggy. It's amazing that families don't know their family members' history like that. It's just astounding that it can go like that. Very
That's one of the
interesting.
reasons I wrote the books, because I wanted to
Absolutely.
capture their legacy. I wanted them to. It's really a story about a team, and that's why I wanted to preserve their history, so their families knew what they did. This is a interesting photo, only in that we took this as part of a dog and pony show for General Omar Bradley and his wife. They came to Camp Reasoner on their visit to Vietnam. The division said, I want Killer Kane to cam me up, even though they're supposed to be resting up. I want them to cam me up, get ready to like they're going to go on patrol, take a dog with them, and talk to General Omar Bradley and his wife, which we did. We went up to the G3, or not the G3, the S3 uh, uh, bunker, and we talked to the general. He was very, very engaging and very nice person, and his wife was equally nice. What was good about this is after talking to us, she took the names and addresses of all of our parents, and she wrote them very nice handwritten letters that, I've seen your son. I saw him at Camp Reasoner. He looks like he's eating well. He's in good shape, and he seems to be happy. All the things that make a mother feel good. My mother kept that letter from her until the day she died. She treasured that letter.
What like I said earlier when we spoke earlier, what a lady. There she does, with her husband. I'm sure she cares because her husband is such the man he is, but to not know y'all at all and to do something like that, it kind of makes me emotional even thinking about it. That's what a lady. I mean, Mr. General Bradley dang sure picked a good one with that lady.
He sure did. I know that that letter brought tears to my mother's eyes when she showed it to me.
I can only imagine the day she got that and opened that up. That, wow, I've got goosebumps actually thinking about it.
This is Sergeant Kelly. He's looking at a bunker we found out west. I can't remember exactly where it is, but I believe it's a base camp that we found off of the Yellow Brick Road.
We've actually got another black and white photo of that one from a different angle. Great shot.
Yeah, this is Sergeant Hawkshurst. He's planting a claymore and a block of C4 into a tree because the landing zone is too small for a chopper to get into with that obstacle in it. So we blew that up, and the chopper was able to get in and take us out.
That is a lot of these are my favorite photos, but that's a great action shot of seeing them getting ready to clear the LZ. Oop, oop, oop.
Okay, here's a picture.
Get in trouble.
Here's a picture of a dead NVA. We ambushed a 368th. Oh, okay. Which one are you on now? Okay.
There we go. I'm sorry.
Yeah. He is a lieutenant in the 368th Missile Regiment, which is a regiment of the subsidiary regiment attached to the 2nd NVA Division. They're the people that took rockets and fired them periodically at the Da Nang Air Base. And he was conducting a reconnaissance for such a mission. He and 2 other NVA soldiers. We killed 2 of them, and one of them got away. We think we wounded him, but we were unable to recover his body if in fact we killed him. He had some interesting documents on him, including a map of where they were going to locate the rockets that were going to fire onto the airbase.
Yeah, and in the book before, he gives a great detail of what Rocket Ridge and just how much of a hassle this guy was, or his unit was, and for him to for Killer Kane to get him out of the game was a huge help. Although they were all around, but knocking out an officer that was in a recon greatly helped Da Nang out. They were getting just pounded.
There's a picture of Davis Powell and Sergeant Kelly back at Camp Reasoner. Davis Powell was my best rear point man. He was very, very capable. Did an excellent job of protecting us wherever we went. If we were going too fast, he would slow us up so he could cover the trail. He was very adept at taking foliage and whatnot and putting it back in place. He knew that the enemy would follow us. Sometimes They even had dogs, and he made sure we were safe. At least we were not taken from behind, which we never were. We had one incident where the enemy was following us up on a ridge line above Happy Valley, and they were following us, and he saw them and opened fire on and killed the man that was their lead point man, and the rest of them backed off. He was very observant, very capable. He also, along with me, he and I both engaged that NVA wearing the tiger stripes. We both put a lot of rounds into that individual. This is another picture of Doc Connor working on a wounded, one of the wounded NVA. He was alive. Doc did his best to try to save him. We called in for a medevac because we knew of the intelligence value of a prisoner like him. You'll notice he had a good haircut. He was in good shape. He was well fed, healthy. He probably had just come down from North Vietnam. Didn't have any signs of any kind of parasitic disease or even mosquito bites. So I think he was new in country, and that's probably why he was walking down a trail and not paying attention, and he paid for it with his life.
Yeah, I mean, he looks very thick and healthy, and relative terms, and like you said, doesn't look like he's been eat up or been in contact with many bushes or anything at all. So yeah, that's I shouldn't get in. I don't think we'll get in trouble for showing this. It's just the gory stuff that they get mad at. But Doc Connor up there, we're hoping to have him on later this month, and it'll be great to get him to tie in his side of things with you. And great medic. I know you speak very highly of Doc Connor.
Yeah, don't call him a medic. He's a corpsman. Yeah,
yes, sir. Absolutely.
He won't like it if you call him a medic. He's a corpsman, and he's a damn good one.
Absolutely. That one, I think that might be another yellow brick road.
That's a yellow brick road, and it's hard to see, but there's 3 people in that picture.
That nasty stuff to be going through all day, guys. I just think about doing that.
Lots of leeches out there.
Ooh. There's another one coming through the trail. Would that be on a regular day? How often would y'all go from a fairly wide open space to y'all having to bust out the K-bars and the bolos and cut trees?
Well, we try to stay off of trails because trails are used by the enemy. Sometimes we had to do it. Sometimes we were looking for something that we had to use the trails. Most of the time we were off the trails and we were cutting foliage very slowly. Sometimes the point man would take out his K-bar and he would spend maybe 10 minutes before we could even go 5 feet. That's how thick it was.
Legend.
That's Fred Vogel, Captain Fred Vogel. I took him out on his first snap in patrol, and we were going out to an area near the Nong Son coal mine to insert a experimental acoustic detection device that was actually quite heavy, about the size of a PRC-25 radio. And we took it and we put it on a trail. We got a reading on it. We thought that somebody was coming down the trail, but for some reason they stopped and didn't come down. And so we never really got a chance to find out whether that device worked well or not.
And guys, Captain Vogel will be coming up several more times in the part 2 that we'll be doing on the second part of Andy's career. He actually got Andy his last job in Vietnam, and he is a Force Recon and a MACV-SOG / NAD legend. He is quite the man. Well, I'm not even sure if Captain Vogel's still alive, actually.
Yes, he is. He's
He is.
alive. Lives in Northern Virginia, and I'm in contact with him Has a lovely wife, a Thai wife with I think 3 girls, all lovely girls. Uh, he had a very interesting career. When he left the Marine Corps, he stayed in the Marine Reserves, but he was with the State Department and some other folks for quite a while, and did a lot of adventurous things in Southeast Asia, which we will not discuss
Yeah. Oh
here.
yeah. He was doing some secret squirrel stuff. I
Yeah.
would let him know we all of us out here are definitely thinking about him and seeing his pictures all the time.
Okay, that's me and my younger self. As you can see, I'm beat to hell. I'm tired. This is out near Laos, and smelly, dirty, tired.
And the look that says, if I could get to you while you're pointing the camera at me, I would snatch it away from you real quick.
Oh yeah, that was taken at a weak moment. Okay, this is Camp Reasoner, and I took this picture because up on the left-hand side is the mess hall where we ate, and to the right would be the lower portion of the camp where hooches were located, and also further down the hill was the LZ where we were taken on our missions. That
I've actually
mess hall was very, very good.
I've actually got two great shots of that you put out of one of the entire base and then one of the LZ.
Yep, there it is.
Now, was
That's the
this
entire base.
now is I'm just guessing the airstrip down here, and then were these y'all's bunks to where or hooches to where y'all could just walk straight to the airfield?
Well, you've got hooches up in the lower there, and then there's other hooches down further. Our hooch is the one overlooking. Just go back to the left. Go back to the left. Go back to the right now. To the right, right there. That hooch is the one that's overlooking the LZ, and that was the officer's hooch. And my back porch looked out at the LZ, and also the rice paddies there that you can see on the top part of the slide.
Excellent. I was wondering exactly where yours was, and here is LZ Finch, I believe. Yep.
Yep, that's LZ Finch. When I first got there, there was no marsden matting. It wasn't hard. It was all dirt. And when those choppers came in, there was a tremendous amount of dust and dirt flying around. They solved that later on. So this picture was taken later on.
A question that came up, or actually for me, not on the thing, what was y'all's use of the, what we call, King Bees, the 46s, were they used for, uh, a chase craft with y'all in the Chinook, or, what were the
No,
King Bees used?
our aircraft were all Marine Corps aircraft. The King Bees were H-34s, which were assigned to SOG. They were also flown by both ARVN and by Marines. We used the HU-34 for inserts when we had problems with the 46. People will remember the 46 had some problems with its rear rotors, and a couple of them went down and lost everybody aboard. So for about a month, we used nothing but the 34. 34 was good. It would go into a small zone. It only had one exit point, which was on the right-hand side of the bird. But it was very maneuverable, and it could get in and out of a zone pretty quickly. I liked it, but of course it was limited to the number of people you could have in it. You could only have 6, sometimes only 4, because of power considerations and the fact that we were going in at higher altitudes. But generally speaking, it was a good bird, and I liked it.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things out of those old workhorses. To be honest. Oh, great photo. Hang on, let's see here. Boop, boop, boop. There we go. That's him.
Okay, that's after my first tour ended. I was assigned to Marine Barracks, Washington, D.C. Uh, for most people that know about this, this is a place where Marine ceremonies units are sort of like the old guard that the Army has. We provided ceremonial troops for parades and Pentagon arrivals. We did a Friday night parade, which is really a PR activity. We also did a Tuesday night sunset parade out at the Marine Memorial. We provided honor guards for burials at Arlington. It was a very nice place to be in peacetime, but I could not handle it in wartime. I just felt awful because I was living way too nice a life. I mean, I lived in a BOQ where we had servants. It was just too pleasant for me. And then I got a letter from Thomas Keating, my last company commander, who told me my platoon was seriously hit in Hue City. And I felt that had I been there, that would not have happened. Maybe not, maybe. And so I immediately, after being there only a couple of months, I immediately requested assignment to go back to Vietnam. And I had a very understanding commanding officer, Colonel Joe Fagan, who became a general. He said, if you finish the parade season, I'll let you go if you haven't changed your mind. Well, I finished the parade season and I hadn't changed my mind, so he let me go back to Vietnam for my second tour. I was there a total of 8 months.
Wow. I remember it has to be in book one in Killer Kane, I believe, or it may yeah,
Yes.
it's in Killer Kane when you're doing your darndest to get out and try and stay. And I believe it's the major or a captain that says a Marine does not turn down going to eighth and I. You don't do that. And you were basically like, all right, I've got to at least go and do something there for a while and hopefully get back. I thought that was pretty interesting that you weren't wanting to go, even it being a prestigious position, so to speak.
Well, I was fortunate. Joe Fagan was a veteran of World War II and fought on Iwo Jima. And when I told him why I wanted to go back, he was understanding. He said, "I think you're crazy, Andy, but I understand. And if you really want to go, you can go." So he let me go.
Wow. Yeah, that's if you ask enough, I guess it's finally going to come through, and you did bother him enough.
I talk about this young man. This is Thomas Dowd from Manhasset, New York. Came from a large Irish Catholic family. His father was a very successful owner of department stores. He and I went to basic school together, spent about 5 months there together. He and I were both Roman Catholics. We went to Mass every Sunday together. And afterwards, we would often have lunch out in Quantico and or brunch. And we would talk about what we wanted to do with our lives. He did not intend to stay in the Marine Corps. He wanted to be a college professor, an English language professor, and maybe coach soccer. He was an All-American soccer goalie. Very fine young man. He and I were both initially assigned to 1st Marines, but my orders were changed. He went there, and within 30 days, he was dead. He was leading his Marines in a attack on a village, and he was killed. Later on, I visited his family in Manhasset, New York, and his room was kept by his mother as a shrine to him. It was almost as if he just stepped out a minute ago and would be back. And I asked her, why do you keep his room so immaculately clean and neat? Why do you change the bedding every week? she says it helps me deal with the grief. The family was stricken with some real grief over the loss of Tom.
God. For guys in the books, I'm not going to ruin it, but it affected you a great deal also, and that more or less lit a fire under your boiling pot for quite some time. So that it's a very very moving story, and if y'all read a lot about him in Killer Kane, he was a outstanding Marine while he was there, all throughout, but especially while I was there, he seems like he was just an outstanding man.
This is Captain Eric Barnes. He's first lieutenant. He had been in the infantry, won a Silver Star. Very, very brave guy. We all looked up to him. He was in the hooch with us. He was always helpful to me. When I arrived, he had just been brought out of the field because he made captain. Captains did not take patrols out, and he became, I think, the S3 or the S2 for our company. But a mission came up that it was a prisoner snatch, required a lot of experience and a lot of bravery and whatnot. And the patrol leader that would have taken that patrol out was unavailable for some reason. And even though he didn't have to, Eric volunteered to take the patrol out. He had exactly 3 weeks left to go before he rotated home to his wife and 2 very young children. He was killed. A landmine went off in front of him. Sergeant Blankenship was killed instantly. Eric was wounded gravely and died on the medevac chopper taking him back to Da Nang. His family suffered greatly because of his loss. I don't want to go into the details of what happened to his family, but it was very, very sad. His wife never remarried, and his children suffered because they grew up without a father.
People, I'm glad we're able to get vets on and all that, and I wish there were more people that would look at not only what our past veterans and their families went through, the way we hold up our Gold Star families today, which we absolutely should, and I'm not saying anything against that, but the families and the young wives of the Vietnam era veterans could have greatly used that help back then.
They sure could have. And people don't realize that, when a Marine dies, his death usually is quick and he doesn't suffer all that much, but his families suffer for a lifetime. And people need to realize that the families are the real casualties of war.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said anything better myself. Oh.
And this is an airstrike, napalm, called in pretty close.
I think our guesstimate was in between 200 and 300 meters off that you.
Yeah, that's about right. The reason it looks far away is because it's down the side of a hill.
Mm-hmm. That is that's scary getting napalm in like that.
That's more the yellow brick road.
Great, and this is the photo I commented on about the movies at least getting the palm frond looking leaves and all that correct, like Apocalypse Now and all that. They don't usually. I'm kind of mad at some of the Vietnam movies, but this is what you can picture in a Vietnam movie.
I don't like
terrifying.
Any of them. I don't like any of them. Whenever I watch a war movie, for some reason I just say that can't be the way it happened. It's just too many. I know it's Hollywood; they have to make it make money, but to me, they don't really capture the realism of war.
I hate to say it, all of the modern movies have really done a disservice doing stuff like that, and just in my opinion.
This is another picture of an airstrike. This is down in a valley. This is where we had just off of the west end of Happy Valley on a ridge line where 4 trails come together. They're all major infiltration routes. and we had numerous contacts. We ambushed those trails for about 2 days, and we killed quite a few NVA coming down those trails. They were totally oblivious to us. They were at sling arms. It just was really
Shooting
terrible what
fish
we
in a
had to do
barrel.
to them because they just were not prepared. We heard voices before they finally got their act together. I think they were coming after us, and they were talking down below us along one of these trails, and I hit them with an airstrike.
Yeah, you pay for your carelessness, and sadly, not sadly, they paid for their carelessness.
Yep. This is Dave Powell looking in that same bunker.
That's a great photo of the bunker, guys. You're seeing right there, kind of like what we see in Ukraine now. You dig it out, get you some wood, bamboo across the top, put some earth over top of it. How deep, on average, would these the bunkers y'all find go?
Well, there are 1 and 2 man bunkers, and usually they were to a depth of about say 7 or 8 feet.
Wow. Okay, man, they're doing it. And that's another thing that people, in my opinion, overlook and don't give the North Vietnamese and even the VC credit for the way they were able to maintain the trail and dig bunkers and tunnels the way they did. I mean, just engineering masterpieces. Great photo.
This is another picture of us stopping on, I think this is a yellow brick road.
Wow, looks like the RTO's pack right here, I believe, with the radio, and got 3 of y'all. Are those boonie caps or
Watch caps, Navy
watch
watch
caps?
caps. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow. I don't think I've ever seen any of y'all with the watch caps on. That's a pretty cool picture. Oh, that ain't gonna get me in trouble. I'm sorry. I'm gonna show it.
That's the one of the NVA from the 402nd Sapper Battalion that we killed.
And if you'll recognize, I think that might look like a canteen. I can't
That's a
tell if that.
canteen. That's a canteen.
Okay.
We
That
captured
looks.
all kinds of equipment, canteens, a couple of pistols.
Oh yes, I remember the pistols y'all got too. That was another good find. Y'all really did find a lot of neat stuff. Uh,
They had a lot of explosives, a lot of rice, probably
another.
another ton of rice.
I was about to
Um,
say, y'all ran into more rice than anybody I've ever seen. I mean, tons, literally tons of rice.
well, what they would do is they got their rice primarily from a place called the Arizona Territory. And it was an area that the ARVN had no control over whatsoever. Every time the 5th Marines went into it, they got into firefights. The people there were totally supportive of the communists or totally cowed by the communists. And the 2nd NVA Division would send teams into the Arizona Territory and sometimes into Antenna Valley to get rice. And they had no shortage of rice. They could get rice, although later on we encountered in my second tour NVA soldiers who were literally starving. They just could not get enough food.
God. Mm, mm, mm.
And there I am calling in an airstrike I think that's up on the side of a hill overlooking the Quezon Valley.
Great photo. And wow, let's see. What would y'all use to keep the mic, the handset covered? Was that just a plastic bag? What would y'all?
It was plastic, and they were specially
Oh,
made for covering the handset.
wow. Okay. Very neat. Oh, that's another up close shot. I think we're starting to get. Yeah, that's Captain Vogel and Bob Buddha. Mix of SOG stuff. That's Doc Connor. Actually, another photo of him
I was checking
trying
for
to
a
save.
heartbeat. Mhm.
hmm I think that's Doc again. I believe we have hit our. Oh nope,
Oh,
there's
that's
gone.
Garner and Slowick,
hmm
and that's in Elephant Valley.
Another great photo. And actually we do have the landing zone. I believe we've got that's First Sergeant Marquise
Yes,
Jacks. Yeah,
he's a
okay.
legend. Yeah, he's a
Yes,
legend.
sir.
Mhm.
I finally looked him up yesterday and remembered. I was like, that's who that was.
That's Hager.
Yep. Some of my files are messed up. That's you again. There we go. That's the last one.
Yeah,
That's the LZ.
that's us waiting to go out on a mission. I think that patrol had what 7 people. There's 6 there, and I think I took the picture.
I think that's what Doc said, that that was the time that you were one of the only few times you were not in the photo. 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, 8. And is that just a work coach to where y'all get your stuff together up here on the top right? Like a
I think that's what that is. Yeah,
Okay, that would make sense, having something at least close by if y'all needed to take care of business or something. Major Simmons, I believe you said.
yeah, that's Major Simmons.
Yep, that's Mr. Wardlow when he lost his middle finger. And I believe, gentlemen, we have. Oh, there's
That's
Slowick
Slowick.
again. I believe we have reached our. There's record petrify.
There's Vogel.
There's Vogel getting ready
That's
for a
Vogel.
dive op, and oh, y'all's wanted poster. That is when y'all. I forgot if where Doc said y'all found that, but he sent that to me. And if you notice, guys, it says 10,000 piastri reward for any information, or preferably a dead force recon Marine. And we got a blood
I don't
pin.
think they collected much.
No, I don't think anybody got paid out. We've got a blood pinning ceremony. We've got a POW grab, but these are not Andy's men. And that's the end of that. I know we've got 1 or 2 more questions, and I've had you 3 hours, so we're going to end it and because we've still got a part 2. But I think a great question that Jason put for our ending. How would you like the legacy of Force Recon in Vietnam to be remembered?
Well, I don't really give a lot of thought to that. I wrote my books because I wanted to preserve the legacy of the men that I served with, um, and I think I accomplished that. I think I think what is important to know is that there were men who would go out and do extremely dangerous job, far from friendly forces, do it willingly, do it continuously, and they weren't the only people that did that. Of course, we had our brothers in SOG and the SEALs and some other LERPs and what have you. But I think the American public have to know that there are people who will take on those extremely dangerous missions and do so and not complain about it.
Yes, sir. I that's one thing that I've come across not only with my SOG men, but also with all of you Force Recon men. That y'all are extremely humble. Y'all were there to do a job. You did it, and most of you don't give it a second thought, and would have done it and would still do it all over again the exact same way without a second thought or anything. So I find that very interesting and commendable that the y'all's legacy and the way it's being preserved not only by you. I'm glad we were able to get you on here for all of these other people to see you. I have linked. You have done another podcast. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but it was a 2-parter, much like we're gonna do. And I'll share that. And I'm just glad you have written your books and that you are preserving your teams and the men their histories. It needs to be done, and I'm just so glad that you, Doc Norton, and some of the other Force Recon men are doing it. But did you let me see if there's any more questions. I think everybody's pretty asked out. We had a heck of a day here. Would you is there anything else you'd like to close with before we end today, sir?
No, just Bud, I'd like to thank you for doing the job you're doing. You're preserving a history that is lost to a lot of people, and it's commendable job you're doing, and I really appreciate it.
That means more to me than any thanks I could get from anyone else. Coming from you, I greatly appreciate that. And it's an honor to know you, and to I would like to say to have become friends with you, and be able to speak with you as much as we get to speak. It's an absolute honor to know you, and get to speak with you. Guys, we're gonna speak here in a minute and see how Andy's schedule is gonna do, and that way we can go ahead and get part 2 lined up, and I'll keep y'all informed of that. But we are gonna go ahead and close it out. This is the longest episode we've had by far, but it flew in my opinion. We're at the 2 hours and 59-minute mark, so I think we're gonna close it down. Mr. Andy, if you want to stay on, but while I end it, we'll talk for just a second. But guys, we'll see y'all later, and everyone's thanking you right now, Mr. Andy, as well they should. So, guys, y'all have a great rest of your afternoon. We've got some more shows this week, and I'll be in touch with y'all. See y'all later.